We are going into item C, discussion topics. And for action items, discussion of the fiscal year 2019 proposed budget. The floor is yours, Mr. Moon.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Well, welcome to this year's budget presentation, actually for 2019. As was the case last year, we're going to have several staff presenting throughout this presentation, and I'll be emceeing the show tonight. So I want to talk first about what we'd like to get out of this work session. And what we want to do is look at the year in review of 2018, look at what we've done, and ensure understanding of what we're proposing for 2019 in the budget, as well as a couple of policy questions that we would like direction on from the Commission regarding solid waste and utility rates for next year, solid waste services. Also ensuring understanding of the MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, jurisdictional transfer and what that means, not only to our budget, but to us as a community. And then, as I mentioned, preview 2019 and projects and programs. So the order follows as I just went through. So let's take a look at 2018 in review. And this is an exciting time of year, joy and happiness with the holiday season, and it's budget season, so how can you not be happy? So we want to take a look back, though, and look at what we've done this past year. So we start out with housing, and through our relationship or partnership with LISC, we've been able to build new homes and rehab homes and keep people in their homes. And through that partnership and the good work of LISC and our city staff, we've seen results. Obviously, we'd like to see more in this area, and we'll show how we're planning on doing that next year. We opened up the Financial Opportunity Center in November, and this is a collaboration between LISC, Urban Alliance, Momentum, and support from the Foundation for Excellence. And so this program will help build financial security for residents and their families. And it's housed at the Douglas Center. We've adopted or you've approved several neighborhood plans, and we have more to come in 2019. And in doing so, we've been able to work closely with neighborhood organizations and help them determine their future through their neighborhood plans. So a good citizen engagement piece. Foundation for Excellence was actually assembled, and policies have been put in place, governance, and they have a mission statement now. So now the real work begins in 2019 with them, as they will start reviewing and deciding, based on commission recommendations, funding for 2020 projects. We were able to replace 500 water services containing lead. A lot of these were on the north side neighborhood, but many were throughout the city. So again, our commitment to creating a safe community through clean drinking water is evident through our water service replacement, which we've been able to keep our commitment and grow it. We also have infrastructure investment. This picture is actually Oakland Drive this past summer, being paved by our own city crews. And we've been able to invest $7 million this year in roads, and plus investing in other infrastructure and utilities, tree trimming, street lights, and the traffic signals. You'll recall back in, was it July, August, we had a PFAS crisis with our neighbors in Parchment. Our public services department was able to get in there, and within, was it 16 hours, James?
Within 6 hours.
6 hours, we were able to connect their system to ours, and in 21 days, do it so on a permanent basis. So again, helping them get clean water. Our Super Rec program was expanded into 4 sites, and we were able, through these sites, to help youth throughout the day, giving them activities, keeping them occupied, as well as feeding them at these sites. And we expect to expand these even more in 2019. You'll recall our meeting in Davis Street Park. We have a skate plaza there, as well as other features and amenities. And again, it's just showing how we can work with our neighborhoods in designing these public spaces. Fraze Park, several amenities here. Tennis, you'll see the before and after, a new path, other amenities that the neighborhood wanted. Henderson Tot Lot. This one's big because it includes a shelter and other amenities, ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act compliant entrance, and a Gaga pit, if anyone knows what that is.
Oh, yeah.
It's not Lady Gaga, I know that. Bates Alley. This was opened this summer, or fall, and is now a promenade for downtown behind several storefronts. There'll be seating out there and a good use of public space for the community. And community events. We had Lunchtime Live. We had movies in the park. And this picture is taken from this year's tree lighting ceremony. You can see the number of people there. Certainly the most I've ever seen in my 5 years here. I don't know if we had record or crowds that large before. And then several public safety enhancements. We have Consolidated Dispatch, which was opened in October, officially went live. So now they are handling all the calls for the county jurisdictions. Pastors on Patrol, which was created this year, where pastors are actually out on the streets with officers and creating a bridge between public safety and the community. Police Athletic League, a lot of activities around that, recreational, also mentoring, and just a way, again, to address our youth needs in the community, especially related to public safety. And then our recruiting and hiring process that seems to be going on in perpetuity. So we will be proposing some positions there that we'll get to later. Amnesty Day was this past fall, and it was a partnership between the county, our city attorney's office, and public safety, where people were able to expunge their records for minor offenses, as well as social service and employment agencies were in the park to help them. And that was a real success. And then several developments. We've got Midtown Park Marketplace, again, empty, vacant building, transformed into a new market for the Vine in Oakland area. We have Lot 9, which is going to be housing and office space, and we'll also house the Kalamazoo Promise. So that's an exciting development. Lot 2 right here behind City Hall is going to be a housing, and all of these include parking built into them. So that's important that we're taking surface lots, creating density and development, but also providing parking at the same time. Exchange, we're seeing the final stages of that project. The crane is actually coming down this week. That's why Westridge was blocked off over the weekend and this week. Got a lot of work to do, but again, housing, office space, and commercial for our downtown. And then customer service. We have the 3-in-1 center that we're working on. We've done all the groundwork with this, and we've actually got ambassadors hired they started taking calls, and Gina will get into this more, but started taking calls about a week ago and a week and a half ago. And what we expect out of this in 19 is a one-stop place for residents to contact any interactions with the city, make contact, and get helpful and fast service, while at the same time being able to track data related to that so we can use that to inform our service provision. And then finally, innovative budgeting. So we've been working on this past year. We had priority-based budgeting, or we have that, and we're still working on how to weave that into our budgeting process. But we've been working with OpenGov, which is an online platform, to actually prepare our budget this year. And we've got a couple of folks who will be previewing this with you. The idea here is to have an online platform or portal for residents to log into or to go into and be able to dive deeper into our financial information, our budget at various levels. So again, we're working on transparency here. So that's what we're excited about this year, and you'll see how we plan on using that. So with that, I will turn it over to our new CFO, Steve Vicinci. Steve comes to us from Van Buren County. He worked there as their finance director. We're excited to have him on board. Actually, this is his second week on the job, so he gets to present to you all. So, and we got Melissa Fuller, deputy director, and Jennifer Clark, our accounting and budgeting manager.
Welcome, team. Floor is yours.
Okay, so we're going to actually, instead of use PowerPoint slides, we're going to walk you through the budget highlights here using OpenGov. And then once I'm done with my section, Jennifer's going to come up here and show you just how interactive and transparent the view software is for us. So to start here, just from our website, we have Melissa here who will show how the public can get into OpenGov, and it's just as simple as going to About, Government, and OpenGov. And so here we have what's called a story in OpenGov that it's the highlights of our proposed budget. Let's go down. We got a little paragraph here describing about this being a working document. It's a proposed budget. It may change between now and when it's planned to be adopted on January 22nd. As we continue through, we also give a little description about fund accounting, so people that aren't necessarily as familiar with governmental accounting can kind of get their head around loosely about how we are a little bit different than a commercial entity. And then to start here with the actual budget, this is the city as a whole. We budget $181.7 million for the year. That is all of our funds, all of our departments, everything together. And as we break it down here, as we highlight the sections, we can see where the general fund is 36% or $64.8 million of that total. Our water fund is at $33 million at 19%. Wastewater is 18% at a little bit under. We have another section here, which is made up of Foundation for Excellence projects, grant funds, local streets, and solid waste. We also have our major streets funds and our capital project fund at $10 million. And again, Jennifer's going to deep dive into some of these charts when she comes up and shows you just how open this is for us. Taking us now to the general fund, which is kind of a focus of our presentation. Here we have a description of all the departments that fill into our general fund. We have city manager's office, management services, HR, IT, the new 311 customer service. We have a number of community departments of public safety, public services, community planning, economic development, and parks and rec. And then, so the general fund's overall revenue projection is $64 million. $22 million of that comes from taxes. That's about 34%. We get $16 million from the Foundation for Excellence. We have an intergovernmental section, which is about $11 million. The majority of that is our state revenue sharing. And then we have internal services for $6.4 million. We have a little other slice here. That's our transfers in, licenses and permits. And as we show the interactivity, we'll see more of the detail of that. And finally, charges for services. So as we continue down, now we have the expenditures for the general fund at $64.8 million is our projection. A majority of that, 64%, is community focused, outward work with public safety and our other departments. We have also $16.7 million, 26% for governance. That's our internal services, IT, HR, management services. And our last piece here is legacy costs, which is our retiree healthcare portion with our bond payment and our annual contribution to those costs. And then just a couple more ways to break down how we're spending our money. On the left here, you can see by department, where public safety, which is police and fire, they're 48% of the total budget. And then we have another other section, which that includes IT, community planning, development, parks and rec. We have what's called non-departmental OPEB, that's other post-employment benefits, again, our retiree healthcare portion. That's not that's section up into its own department in the budget. There's public services, some unallocated non-departmental at 8% for $4.9 million. And finally, management services is the last largest chunk there. On the right, you can see where, again, it's a total summary of our expenditures. Our largest expense is personnel. We're focused on providing services for the public and not trying to manufacture or create products. So that is typically the largest expense of government. We also have an operating section. It's made up mostly of contractual services, utilities, and other supplies. Another other section, which is external transfers for debt service and capital improvements. And then a couple more slices here for capital and internal services and fees. So it's kind of a summary of the general fund expenditures within our budget this year. As we continue down, we also show our 5-year fiscal plan. So at the current year, we are budgeting a slight deficit, but a lot of that is due to one-time startup costs for a number of different projects this year. And our plan is within the next 3 years, those will be even off, and at that point, we will start to hopefully be able to start increasing our overall fund balance and have hopefully a surplus at that point. So at this point, I believe I'll turn it over to Jennifer and let her dig a little bit deeper into some of those numbers for you and show you how OpenGov works and get into more of the details.
Mr. Manager, are we holding questions for the end of each presentation, or how do you want that handled?
I think we could take them as we go along. That way we don't lose questions as we get further into it. So,
questions for the director before we move to the next person? Could you go back 1, 2 slides? The one that shows the department expenses. It's on the left-hand side.
We're side by side.
Yeah. So under the other section, I heard Parks and Rec and what? Oh.
I'm sorry. Community planning and development, IT. There may be I believe there's some other smaller portions beyond that.
So I'm assuming with the system, there's the ability to actually have them have their slice of the pie.
Yes, actually, Jennifer will go through this exact part in her portion here. Did you want to skip ahead and just do this one over here? Or did you want to wait?
I can wait, but making,
yes.
To me, it lessens their importance when we don't have them listed with public safety and management services, which I think is interesting that we don't have Parks and Rec, and so I think it makes a difference. And if you're talking about easy navigation for citizens, if you just want to find out what's going on with Parks and Rec, why would you know they're another? I don't know. Others should be like the smallest piece of the pie up there. So I just think that we need to also have them have their own moment in the sun again.
Sure. And then just to kind of highlight this, we've been working with this for about 2 or 3 months. So some of this, if there's adjustments we can make, we can definitely work towards that with.
I'm assuming it's a work in progress.
Yes.
And you will see once you're actually in the live graph, that is broken out into other sections.
Anyone else? Jennifer?
Okay. And just to remind you, as Steve pointed out, and we navigated to it directly from the city's Kalamazoo website. So this is a live web page that the public at large can come in and actually explore our budget. So this is fully transparent and out there for anybody who has access to our website. So I'm really excited to be able to show you OpenGov. We've been working hard. The departments have been putting a lot of energies into doing something new in a very short window for us this year, to actually use OpenGov behind the scenes to build our budget. Our budget and accounting staff put in a lot of effort getting it ready and reviewing all the information coming on. And the budget team across the city has been putting a lot of effort into reviewing numbers to make sure we understood what was in our budget this year. As Steve pointed out, this is what OpenGov tells a story. It can be used by a general user who isn't very web savvy like me to put together pieces and elements of the budget or data, whatever we have in OpenGov can be presented here in different graph views. We chose to go with pie graphs for the overall presentation, thinking that would give us the most user-friendly approach to our budget this year. So what I'm going to do is show you more on what happens now that it's in OpenGov. So this is nice and gives you some level of information, but what can you do with the information now that it's in there? I'm starting off with our fund level. When you click on the graph, you can see the other piece of that was a fairly large slice, like you pointed out, Mayor. When you come into OpenGov for the first time, it'll give you a chance to have a tour. We're not going to walk through the tour in this meeting, but I do encourage you, if you come in to explore on your own, to click on the tour, and it'll give you some pointers. It'll show you that there's some things you can do. You have exports and reports over here, some filters, and it'll give you a little bit more information on how you use this report. But we're going to click on View Report and just get to the fun part. So now when we're looking at the smaller picture of the budget as a whole, the other pie was fairly large, but now you can see it's broken down into a much smaller section. It's pointing out that we spent $10 million in FFE projects and $4.7 million in grants, $4.6 million in local streets. So this is just the fund view. We're not going to drill in further on this particular graph because honestly, once you're in a fund, it's the fund, so there's nothing more to see there. So we're going to back out to go back to the story, and now we'll go down to the revenues, and this is general fund revenues, so it's not for this particular pie is highlighting the general fund. But we're going to click on this, and again, paying attention to other, it's a fairly big slice here of the purple pie, but when we open up the report, you're not going to see that. Go ahead and click on it. We still have an other, but now it's only 400. So and part of that is some limitations right now with OpenGov. When they create the story, they decide what they're grouping and what they're not. We're not giving any control over that, but we can definitely work with them on getting more information transparent on the front. So this is where you can really start to use the graphs. When you start to look at information by type of expenses, that's where you can really start to see more information that's there. In the past, when we've had budget books, you would have seen the general fund has $3 million of charges for services, but it doesn't necessarily give you any information about what that means for us. So now if we click on this, you can now see charges for services. So this is just that $3 million of charges for services now broken down into its various elements. We have tax collection fees. We have some public safety revenues that are brought in. That'll be, for example, public safety. That'll be when we send officers out. We have Bronson contracts with Bronson Hospital. We go out to the Metro Transit Center. But what we're going to show you is what happens. We're going to pick on Parks and Rec. So if you click on Recreation and Park fees, and then you can start to see not only that recreation and park fees make up that of the budget, but here's how their fees are broken down. This is as far as you can go with the level of information on the budget level, but that just gives you a taste of how you can drill in, and so you can, that's pretty much as far down as you can get. And then we'll go back to the stories. And then we'll show you that you can do the same thing with expenses. Again, we're divided between personnel, operating, some other, and capital. But if we click on the report, it'll show more. Other is still a fairly large piece, but we're going to pick on operating for a minute. So if you go into operating expenses, you'll now see that services and supplies make up the largest portion of our operating budget. If you click on services, you'll now be able to see more information on what kind of services we have. We have outside contractual services, utilities, and all of that, and you can see the pieces that each of those make up of our budget. The other thing we have, we'll skip over this for a minute. The other thing we have is if you scroll down, there's also in each of the graphs where we talk about the graphs, there's also another link here that talks about information that's available for other fiscal years. If you click on that, it'll take you to a slightly different OpenGov report that now shows you comparative information through 2017. So these are the same columns that if you were to look at our traditional proposed budget book, these are the same columns we present in the budget book, but now you can see it in more of an interactive way. Once again, we're looking at the report that shows you your supplies broken down by personnel operating, and we are looking at just the general fund. So if we click on operating here, you're going to see the same level of information where you see services and supplies. You can drill in further to services, and you can see outside contractual services versus utilities. Not only that, what this does is if you, as Melissa was hovering over the words over here, it'll show you the totals going across. So if you're looking at, you can visually see the colors changing in size throughout the years, but you can also now see the numbers associated with it. If you're a number person. Personally, I think the colors show you quite a bit. Then if you scroll down, if you really like numbers, you can scroll down and it'll show you the actual totals that are out there for our services in each of the categories in a number form. So, the totals available on the bottom. And the 2018 actual column in here is actually fed from live data. So this is where we were as of last night. So we have a live feed from our financial systems that come into OpenGov every night, and so as you're looking at actuals, those will be representing transactions as of last night. So that is a very brief overview of OpenGov. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we got to use for developing the budget and submitting the budget and controlling the budget process that we were very excited to have this year. We were able to use similar reports as we developed the budget to actually see where the budget was as we were developing it, as we were making decisions, and so it gave us a lot of transparency on the management and on the review level to be able to actually see the pieces, and you could line up and if the number, if one of those bar colors just popped out as being very different from last year, you could really try to dive in and understand what that was. So we were very excited about the process this year, and we have more transparency on its way as we progress through 2019.
Question, Mr.
So remind me our relationship with OpenGov. What does that look like? Is this a contract, an annual relationship with an initial contribution to get started? What's that relationship look like?
They are a company, so we have a contract with them. It's an annual service agreement to maintain. There was an implementation cost for getting OpenGov up and running, and then there will be an annual fee going forward.
So that allows you regular, if you needed, daily kind of interaction. If you notice something or see something that doesn't seem right, or you need assistance or anything like that, that assistance is available. if you had to talk about how the experience has been, and how this tool is assisting you, what would you say about that? What would be your
How long have
comparative
you had it, though?
We have had it, that's a larger question. We have had the budget module just this year. We got it, actually, the commission approved our contract at the beginning of September, so we implemented the budget itself over a very short window.
Yeah.
OpenGov, we started implementing the reporting, I think 2 years ago. It was one of those projects that was staff turnover in accounting, in
Sure.
financial services that we picked up and put down and picked up and we're working on. So it's not been a focused project, but it's been out there, and we've been using it internally for reporting and trying to understand and make sure the transactions that come from our system are right. This is the first time that we felt like it's ready for
Public.
Yeah.
So that all said, I mean, I think it's fantastic, actually. I really appreciate all the ways that information is laid out visually, numbers, the drill down aspect. I mean, next level down, you're going to start seeing things like, a bolt that was purchased or,
Right.
this particular piece of equipment. I mean, it really drills down and so as much digging around as people want to do to the level, I think it's pretty amazing. And I think it's fantastic. We've been talking about doing this kind of thing for a few years now, and like you said, it's budget season, and not everyone gets excited about that. Sometimes just the way we present it, makes it hard to be excited about it. And just on the face of it, I mean, I think this is exciting, and hopefully that adds a little zip to the whole budgeting process. But I appreciate that. I appreciate the work on it. I know that we were going through some transition in our financial, our accounting department during this time also. So I think it's could be extremely informative, and it's very helpful. So I hope it feels that way on the inside too.
And I want to give these to Melissa and Jennifer kudos for the work they've done. As you mentioned, this was a transition year between CFOs, and they picked it up and worked on it, under some pressure to get the budget out. But they did a bang-up job on this. And the nice thing about OpenGov too is we'll be able to print the budget, produce the document. It's like beginning to end. It'll publish it versus how they've done it before. How many staff hours would you guess?
Oh, I don't even know. How many hours?
Hours among hours. So,
Right.
I mean, just that alone will be a huge savings.
The budget book that we have up there is still fairly.
In case they have.
Yep.
Do we have other commissioners that have any questions? Just a real quick one. OpenGov is not just for financial, right, Mr. Manager? It can be used for opening up our data in so many different ways. Public safety data, our Parks and Rec data, all of it. Okay.
They have Open Data, which is a separate platform that we also have, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Commissioner?
Another quick thing is, does their service provide you the opportunity to look at standards across institutions so you can measure yourself that way against what other people spend budget-wise in particular areas?
OpenGov has an open network. As long as the community is willing to share their reports, we can compare ourselves to that community. There are some other features that you can pull in, population data and that sort of thing as well. But, honestly, I haven't gotten into that side very much. I know it's there, and I know we can do it. It's available.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll go into some highlights on staffing and contracting for the upcoming year. And I'll ask Patsy Moore to come forward, Deputy City Manager.
Good evening, Madam Deputy.
Good evening. This is just a quick overview of our staffing. We are asking for 22 full-time positions new in this budget that will bring our total count to 642 full-time positions. Those positions are in public safety. We're asking for 12 new PSOs, and this is really just Chief can talk more about it, but to stabilize operations, to limit the transfer from other divisions, to cover the operations, and to really decrease our part-time expenditures and really give these folks some work-life balance. So we're asking for that will account for 12 of those. The other position is a CSO position with the body cameras and all of the video that we have to process for various reasons. We need a new person to really go through that video, get that video ready for a FOIA request for our city attorney, prosecutor, whoever needs it, and we're just not able to keep up with it at this point. So that accounts for the 13 positions that we're asking for in public safety. In public services, we are asking for 9 positions. We're bringing our lead service installation in-house. That will account for 6 of those positions. Environmental tech will account for 2 of those, and that's really due to some increased regulations that they will have to monitor from here on out. Treasury, we are eliminating 1 position, and this is due in part to the onset of 311, and we'll continue to look at that over time. In Parks and Rec, we're looking for a parks coordinator, really to answer some of the issues that we've had or comments about the condition of our parks, so we have a dedicated resource for that purpose. For all total, we will have 642 full-time positions if this budget is approved, and 9 part-time positions. Just wanted to show you a comparison about our lead water service replacement. When we were doing it by contractor, the cost was approximately per lead service replacement $6,014. Once we bring it in-house, and this is based on the most recent complete year data, which is 2017, that cost is reduced significantly to the $34.37. So you can really see the benefit of having those new positions come in-house in 2019. Yes.
A couple quick questions.
Sure.
On that, this statistic here, what's the statistic for street improvements, or is the public services director going to get into that?
You can certainly ask them that.
Okay, I'll wait till it comes up.
Okay.
It would be, I think, if we're comparing this, it'd be nice to know that number as well. And then I missed the recreation position is for what?
Parks coordinator.
So is that like a parks ranger, or is this, because we've talked about rangers in the past, is that not?
It's not a parks ranger, but it is an individual to really address the complaints that we've been getting about the condition of our parks.
All right, Ms. Manager, when you started, how many staff do we have?
6 something, but we lost Metro, we lost dispatch.
So we lost those folks, but we're still in a similar number.
Close, yeah.
I guess I'm wondering about that. So what's our trend, I guess? What are we going to be seeing? Is that coming up here?
That is not coming up. As you indicated in the last 3 budgets, we have increased budget. So minus Metro, you will see the trajectory of the last 3 years going up. If you'll notice, for this year, we're only asking for those positions associated with public safety and public services department that kind of offset themselves.
How we brought on how many 311 staff?
We have 9 positions in the 311 staff.
And how many metro positions did we lose?
We lost about 102, maybe.
Thank you.
Jeff, just gonna come up.
Yeah, we got Jeff covering capital and
WC manager.
policy proposals. Jeff Chamberlain.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to talk, again, just big picture about where we are with the capital improvement program. So we thought it'd be good to kind of look at where we've been and what's been going on the last couple of years. And so obviously, as we invest in water, sewer, roads, parks, facilities, we're trying to strike a balance between preparing for growth, looking toward the future, and also looking at some things that sometimes are 100 years old when we dig up streets and we find pipes, and trying to make that balance. So looking at the last about 10 years, looking at where we've been and where we're going as far as up to 19, we put together this chart here that showed you just the overall trend. So in blue is the water system, and the red here is what we have for wastewater, then general fund, which are things like facilities, parks, some major equipment purchases, and then major streets and our local streets. So it's pretty easy to see where the trends are for the last couple of years. And between the budgets that the City Commission has approved here over the last couple of years, you can see that we've basically, since about 2016, we've taken an aggressive, proactive approach to trying to address our capital needs in all the different areas. But again, primarily water, wastewater, and local and major streets. So just to go over a couple of the highlights on it, we've gone from about just a little over 10 million in 2014 to 2019. The budget is a little over 41 million that's being proposed on all those different funds combined. Some of the large areas that we're looking at is specifically the blue water. Some of the large projects we have coming online in 2019. There's a water tank being constructed on 131. It's right across from the business park. So you see that to help serve the west side of the city. We are doing preparation work for another water tank on the west side of the county in the Kalamazoo, Texas Township area. And then also, while we're working on some of our streets, we're going to be doing water line replacements, sewer line replacements also. And we also, because it is a regional system, we are doing some proactive expansions in some of the townships in areas that they have planned for growth and where we've planned for the water system to grow also. Wastewater, just at your last meeting, we saw a very large project coming through for wastewater for the solids handling. That's a multi-year project, so some of that is hitting in the 19 budget. And just, again, with the wastewater plant and the pipes, we are trying to be proactive in replacing out old equipment, replacing out old lines, and also looking for future growth. And then in the major and local streets, we're looking at about a $6.8 million project in major streets and about $1.5 million in local streets. Court Street between Portage and Sprinkle will be one of our big projects next year, big reconstruction of that. We'll be doing utility lines while we're doing that one also. We're going to be doing planning and prepping work for Portage Street between Stockbridge up to the Portage Pitcher Connector. That will be another big project we're getting prepped for. And then also we're ramping up the number of local streets. So 28 local street projects we have on the books for next year. And as Deputy City Manager Moore said about the contractors, a good question about streets, you are going to see more and more city crews working on the streets. And we've, as part of the budgets in the past, we have purchased some new equipment. General fund, we are, again, looking at some park improvements. Director Fletcher will be talking more about that. And then also in 2019, we will be hiring an architect. And then hopefully before the end of the year, we'll be breaking ground on the new public safety station on Bryant Street in the Edison neighborhood. So we're very excited about that. Planning Commission reviewed an overview of this last week. It does go before them every year and gave their recommendation on the CIP.
So talk about just a little bit the financing for these CIP projects. Debt financing, for the most part. How do we set the term of that? How does that affect our spending capacity going forward and that kind of stuff?
Sure. So water and sewer funds, they're revenue-based, and so the projects are incorporated, the debt service for the projects are incorporated into the rates that are approved. So those typically are issued based on the life of the asset, so 20 years, maybe 30 years.
Okay.
The other capital, again, it depends on the life of the asset. For capital improvements, general capital improvements, we finance those over 10 years generally.
Okay.
Again, built into our budgets. Most of that is a transfer from the general fund to the capital project fund, where those projects are programmed out of. So it's all built into the budget. It's kind of a tangled mess where you've got debt service, you got capital outlay, but it's a mess that we understand and are accustomed to. So
sure. So in any given year, some things are retiring possibly, and new things are being added.
yeah, that's for our general capital outlay or capital debt service. That is, it's a level, basically a level debt service.
Yeah. Okay.
And just, I'm sorry, one other thing though, including those totals too, for like major streets are any of the federal funds that we receive.
Yeah.
So that's included in those totals also, or any other grants, such as a DNR grant for a parks project, that would be part of the overall program.
Got it. So I didn't know if that was a question for you, Jeff, but just one follow-up on that is, could you remind me the distinction between the major streets and the local streets again, and the funding sources for those two?
Yeah. Major streets, again, capital, bonding, we do some bonding, but
I mean, the funding
The
source.
distinction.
Distinction. What makes it a major street or a local street, and therefore what resources are available? And I'll pose this question for Jim.
James, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a classification of the roads. Major roads, again, things such as Oakland Drive, Portage, Court, and then the local streets, more the way I think that these are your neighborhood type streets, your neighborhood streets, cul-de-sacs, things like that.
But like some Act 51.
Why
which
don't we
major-
have Director Baker address that when he comes forward?
Sounds good.
I had a question.
Oh, Commissioner, sorry.
Yeah, I really applaud the increased spending on water and wastewater. David's always pointing that out, how we have to do that. But I see that local streets were down, and I get a lot of calls about holes in the streets. And how come we're not spending more on that?
Again, we have a multi-year program of which streets based on their conditions, and we know like there's always going to be more streets than we can probably get to in any given year. It kind of goes up and down as different roads have type of needs that they have. It might be a complete reconstruction versus a small repair. So again, the number of streets that we're going to be working on is a pretty high number of streets. Some of them, again, we're able to kind of keep those costs in check by using city crews and able to get a better deal using our own folks on some of these street projects.
So we're not going to cut down on the number of streets we're working on? Is that what you're saying?
Right. We're going to be hitting them very aggressively on the local street side also.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if I could. The deputy city manager is correct in that the dollars spent for local streets might look relatively static, and there may be years where it might have gone down slightly. Historic averages, we spend about $1 million per year on local streets. Some individual larger projects might push that up to like 1.4 million or 1.3 million. But the big takeaway from this is that we're doing more street projects because of city crews. So we're doing, proposed for 28 street projects. If you go all the way back to like 2010, 2012, we did like 4 or 5 street projects. So even though we're keeping those dollars static, the average $1 million per year, we're having a dramatic increase in the amount of streets projects completed because those city crews are able to do those street jobs so much cheaper, so much more efficient than to hire that out and bid it and get contractors in to do it that way. So to see a static local streets isn't the case that we're doing less work. We're doing far more, far greater work. Some of the more complex in-plant jobs that you see that are going out to bid on, say, the water wastewater side, it's mainly due to contractors. Now we are finding our niche and are finding a real ability for contractors to do, for city workers to do the lead service replacements. So we're bringing more of that back in house. So we're really trying to balance and optimize and work. Who can do it better, faster, cheaper? Let's get the contracts for that. Who can do it in-house? Are we better at it? Then let's bring that in-house. So hopefully that answers the question.
Good, thank
And
you.
there are different road treatments we use too.
Right. We're also looking at different road treatments to extend pavement lives as well.
All right. Moving on, we do have a couple policy items that, as we've been discussing the 2019 budget, as far as some decisions that we're making a recommendation for, and we would need to move forward with them in the 2019 budget. And the first and foremost is the utility rates. So as we talk about utility rates, for 2019, we are proposing another increase, but we're looking at one that would be smaller than what was proposed in 2018. So as you know, we do have different rates between in-city customers and out-city customers. So what this table represents is the proposed rates for in-city customers, a typical household, a typical family household, for combined water and sewer. So for a quarterly, it would be about $5.83. But if you look at it on a month-to-month, it'd be less than $2 per month. That would be in-city. The out-city rates are actually also proposed. They are reflected a little bit lower than the in-city rates. And the reason for that is the way we do the capital bonding. It does get very technical, but the city pays for the bonds on the life of the bonds, and the township customers, it gets baked into their rates over the useful life of the asset itself. So that's why there's a rate differential. Again, overall, a lot of these rate changes are being driven by our need to increase the spending on capital, and that's reflected in these rates. We just wanted to kind of remind the public where we are when we talk about rates for water and sewer, about just kind of, it's a pretty good deal in Kalamazoo, quite frankly. This is a comparison again to the major cities in the state of Michigan. So if you look at the two orange bars at the far left, this is existing and proposed for in-city residents. The other two orange bars are existing and proposed for out-city residents. And all the blue bars are other cities. So again, you can see that combined for an average household water and wastewater bill, we're still very cheap and a really good bargain here in the state of Michigan. And then finally, we know there's been a lot of talk about some bottled water here and there, but we'd like to just remind the public too that for less than 2 cents, city water costs, like for 5 gallons, you get 5 gallons of city water for less than 2 cents. If you're going to buy it at the store, you're talking about $1.50 a gallon. So delivering high quality, fresh water that's safe to your front door, to your taps, great bargain still in Kalamazoo. I did want to pause here though, just for one quick second though, again, I know it got called out, but the work that was done by the public services crews and other city crews and staff in Parchment and also the village of Richland on the PFAS issue that they had to step up to the plate was a model of governmental cooperation, and it's being talked about through the state of Michigan. So we're just really proud about that, and we don't talk about it a whole lot, but Director Baker just got his letter from Governor Snyder appointing him to the governor's Public Health Advisory Board for a 4-year term, and a lot of it was due to his work on the utilities. So we want to point things like that out. So let's talk about trash.
Well, you want to pause there and
I'm sorry. Yeah.
get some
Questions, Commissioner? You looking for guidance?
Yeah.
Commissioner Anderson?
So this proposal for rate change will be coming to us as part of our whole budget approval process? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm personally comfortable with the idea. We've talked about this, that there's going to be some adjustment in the rates. I mean, look where we are in the chart. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's partly driven by the capacity to make capital improvements, and we desperately need to do that. We've got a water system, a wastewater system that's, aging here, and I'm fully in support of this idea. It's amazing where we are in the chart, as a matter of fact. And it's still a super deal for a great product here in Kalamazoo. So I'm going to be supportive of that.
So what our steps would be is, hearing any other course of action, we'll prepare the paperwork and the ordinances required for the next steps on this as part of budget approval. Getting into solid waste, we've heard quite a bit of a lot of talk about solid waste millage and in particular bulk trash pickup. And so here's just a little bit of history. In 2016, the solid waste fund was nearing a deficit. At that time, staff proposed a 0.35 mil increase in the budget. We looked at different scenarios, ended up adopting a 0.25 mil increase. And also during that same time in 2016, we changed the bulk trash pickup from monthly to quarterly. So that all happened in 2016. We started getting a lot of feedback in 2016 and 17 and 18, complaints and confusion about the quarterly pickup, people missing their trash day, putting them out at the wrong day. It has dramatically increased our enforcement costs because trash is out at the wrong day or it's in the wrong spot. City crews or our contractor will go out and address it. Again, trash left at the curb on the wrong days. And then we've also just been hearing it, Imagine Kalamazoo meetings, other meetings that we've gone to throughout the community, that people are asking us, can we go back to monthly bulk trash pickup? So we did an informal Facebook poll here recently. I got about 1,900 responses on it. Again, this is Facebook, but basically we did the math that we could go back to monthly bulk trash pickup, and for a house with a market value of $100,000, it would cost roughly about $1 a month extra. Would people support that? And
Mr. Deputy, can we figure what's going on with the screen here?
I do not know.
Let's see how it goes.
Okay. 88% said yes. So again, this is just part of the conversation that we've been having with the community. A lot of times when we're doing our social media posts about other topics, people will chime in and say, yeah, but what about bringing back monthly trash? Thanks for the recycling, but can you bring back monthly trash? And so we would get these messages, social media posts, meeting comments that we receive. So basically we put together a proposal that would go back to monthly trash pickup. It would require a small increase in the millage by 0.175 mils from 1.8 mils to 1.975 mils. And that works out to about $9 per year more for a home with a $100,000 market value. Reason we use that $100,000 benchmark is if you're half of that, you can just cut the number in half. If you've got a $200,000 home, you double that. And we would also continue with the single stream recycling. How this would work if we were to go about doing it, we would then, just like we did with the water rates and sewer rates that we were just talking about, we would build that into the appropriate approvals for the budget. We would need to rebid the solid waste pickup in early 19. We would then do a communication program with the public during the middle of 2019, and then we believe we would be actually able to implement it in the third or fourth quarter of 2019. So that would be the way for us to return back to the monthly bulk trash pickup. Any questions on that?
This is just questions or some comments as well?
Quick comments, folks, so we can get through this.
Okay, so Jeff, you kicked it off by saying informal, so I'll stop with some of my questions about your Facebook poll. Like, I wanted to know how many of the comments and likes and whatnot were paid versus organic, and if you actually loaded a targeted list of residents that you could then match the paid responses so that we know whether or not there's any validity to this poll. I'm unmoved by those numbers.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
From my understanding, we don't know who our residents are not.
So you didn't upload a list to target at all?
We did
okay,
not.
so it could be anybody that's responding?
Could be, yes.
Yeah. All right, so then since my first term, we've talked about a climate action plan, and I understand because I asked Director Kick a couple meetings back when that was going to happen, and we're now looking at, is it the second or third quarter of next year? Third. this doesn't go at all in sync with talking about reducing our climate footprint. So we talked about roads a minute ago, and you're getting responses to Commissioner Cooney about our local roads. We're going to be bringing trucks back on a monthly basis to pick up trash when there are so many other ways in which we can recycle, organizations that will pick it up, and frankly, we see so many property owners dumping in the urban neighborhoods when it's not their house. They're dumping that property, or whoever. Across the street from me, there are owners that have 100 plus units, and they just every month will dump from units outside the city. It gets picked, spread all across the curb. People come around, pick it up, right? But they don't pick up the little things. They don't pick up what goes into the storm sewer. It's just a problem. I know I've been following this because I was one of the no votes. Following some of the comments, I think that it makes sense to realign our pickup so that we don't have pickups in the winter, but bringing it back on a monthly basis, I just think is absolutely irresponsible.
Other comments, please?
So, I would ask, you said there were alternatives. What are some of those?
There's all sorts of nonprofit organizations that will pick up, gently used or used materials. If you drive around during bulk trash pickup, there's people that are picking up because we have a culture of just dumping instead of figuring out how to dispose of it, right? A lot of these materials can be recycled. So just saying, I'm going to put this on the curb because the city's going to pick it up, and then it goes into a landfill. Again, we're talking about climate change and all sorts of problems right now related to climate change. And where does this trash go? It's just going to go into a landfill. I get that people are unhappy that they have to figure out a way in which to dispose of items, but where does individual responsibility fall?
I did write down in my notes that I wanted to look into the cost infrastructure. What would be the total difference if we went monthly for the summer months and not for the winter? So I second your sentiments towards that, Vice Mayor.
It sounds like one, and I'm sort of falling in line with the Vice Mayor and the Commissioner. This one needs more study. I think if we're developing our climate action plan, if we're serious about that, then this should be an engaged conversation around this item, because this is one of the major impacts that we have on the climate. So appreciate all the citizens. We may end up here, maybe. We might, but I'm not sure that we have completed our work. We'll take that, at least the engagement work, the research work, R&D work, all those opportunities. And Vice Mayor, I'm assuming you'd be happy to help, not to give you any more in work, but okay. And that may mean that we need to, love me, but that may mean we need to expedite on that climate action plan that we've been talking about for a long time.
Got some more information.
That's coming up.
Okay. So actually, just to kind of round that out, back to the Vice Mayor's point, about just a quick update on where we are with single-stream recycling. That obviously we had the mixed recycling, and when we had that, we did about 122 tons during our pickups on average. And since the single-stream recycling, we're at about 173 tons per pickup. So about a 40% increase in the amount of recycling that we've been picking up since we've been doing the single-stream recycling. So we think that was a positive move that we made, and it's been working with the public. So I want to give you an update on that. Any other questions?
Questions?
Thank you. All right, so at this point, we're going to do some previews of what's coming up in 2019.
All right.
And Commissioners, I'm sorry, Mr. Manager, just to let you know, we do have dinner for you folks. And so if we don't get through a lot, or we still have a lot to do by 5:30, we're going to cut the dinner, take about 25 minutes. You can eat fast, and then we'll come back to this.
All right.
More paper. Yay.
So we're going to get into the 2019 programs and projects that we're proposing. This is a handout that you might find helpful because you're going to hear a lot of information, and the slides won't necessarily contain that information. So this allows you to track what we're actually talking about. We also we couldn't get it ready for tonight, but we also want to put this information into a timeline for the year, a strategic calendar, so you can follow or track when things are going to be accomplished, and that should be helpful as well. So first, I'd like to call forward our Community Investment Manager, Dora Bonner, and our Community Planning Economic Development Director, Rebecca Kick. They're going to actually cover the first two sections on affordable housing and economic development.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbons. I just broke my glasses, so you know I'm entertaining, so if it falls off, just work with me, because I can't see without them. So, first off, we're going to talk about our LIST City Partnership, and I want to acknowledge Chuck Malik, who is in the audience today, to chime in, if necessary, about the LIST products. So our affordable housing, just so you know that we are targeting between LISC and the city 120% area median income and below. Most of the units we'll discuss are at 80% and below. And also this is the MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is still challenging for us in our local area. So get that out the way up front, that we are working toward getting where our affordable housing is affordable based on City of Kalamazoo rate, wages and stuff. So we're getting there. That's not part of our plan. I know that's a question that's often asked. So what we're doing with the list for 2019 is new single-family housing. We're going to do 8 units of single-family housing, 40 rehabs, home buyer training. We're going to help 100 folks, and 20 people will receive tax foreclosure assistance, and that's the list portion. Our HUD dollars for our 2018 action plan, which has just been approved, we will add 8 new homeowner units at 80%. All of these are 80% below. 10 new homeowners will be supported with down payment assistance so they can become homeowners. We have doing something really different, 2 rental units created that are specified, targeting 2 folks that are disabled. Our homeowner rehabilitation is a total of 135 between community homework, senior services, and another new pilot, something we're piloting this year, is repairing code violations for low-income folks, 25 of those. Our homeless activities with our HUD dollars is a little different this year because we did not receive our emergency solution grant from HUD. So we will support, as we always do, continuum of care through LISC, who supports all of the homeless folks throughout our community. Let me go over this.
Sure.
And so some other developments that are neither LISC or HUD, but are just the things that come through our planning department. We have, for 2018, 407 multifamily units coming and 14 single-family units. And of those, 45 of those units will be 80% and below. Some of the future plan, and these are things like the Exchange Place, 400 Rose, Creamery. We have 623 units coming for multifamily that are still in the planning process, and 14 single-family units, and of those, 120 will be affordable units.
Much better numbers than last year.
Yeah, so we're getting there.
Absolutely. And then we'll go to the next one.
Economic development programs. So the incubator, really excited last Thursday, we went out, a team of us went to view 4 sites to start the site selection process. That process will be completed next week. We will meet and actually choose between a team of us that went, and we will be coming back to determine, have the consultant we hired write the actual business plan, which we should receive in January, and then we'll make a decision to whether to proceed. That business plan will give us the exact numbers for that location, how much we need to raise, how much money it will cost to rehab it, what kind of anchor tenant we'll need to make it affordable for the long term, what else can we do in that space.
Who were the 4 people, or who went out?
Who I went? Goodness gracious, you would ask me that. So it was the team that actually got the consultants. There's some staff from Rock Valley College. There are some local entrepreneurs. I mean, not Rock Valley. I went to the wrong city. I went back to Illinois. I'm sorry.
Western Michigan.
Western Michigan University, thank you, the incubator. Let's see, it's entrepreneurs, folks from SBDC. It's a community group. It's a community group. The 4 sites we visited, if you want to know, there were the Comerica building, the Visiting Nurses building on Burdick, the Cedar Street Fire Station, and Merchant Crossings were the 4 sites that we visited. So hopefully by the first quarter of 2019, we will have a decision on how to proceed. The Business Development Fund, which is our internal economic development program, our plans for 2018 that we will assist 24 business owners with technical assistance, and this includes things like writing business plans, marketing, whatever they need to either prepare for funding or to expand their business and support and solidify their businesses. We have funding for 8 businesses to get facade improvement grants, 10 businesses to get small grants, and these are really mini grants like $2,500 and below, just to help people get stabilized. We have gap financing. 4 businesses will receive gap financing grants, and 7 businesses will receive small business loans. We also
So
have.
Is that out of the dollars that we budgeted for 2018?
For 2018. Right. The LISC Economic Development Plan for 2019 is up to 5 Kiva loans, 10 facade grants, and 2 small business loans. LISC and the city, we've also rolled out and supporting the Douglas Financial Opportunity Center with Urban Alliance. There's a workforce development partnership being developed with Michigan Works for trade apprenticeship program starting in the first quarter. 24 students will be paid during training and then connected with post-training job opportunity. There's also a workforce development project with KPEP to support students getting culinary and construction trades experience.
Cool. Do you have any other questions about housing or economic development?
That's a lot of numbers. Is somebody going to give us copies of written so we could digest that? Because it's too much at one time.
The numbers reference should be on your sheet.
On this?
On this sheet that
Oh,
you're
okay.
standing. Yeah, the one that, this is your cheat sheet, Commissioner, so it should help you keep it.
Are they ordered? Are they ordered? I don't think they're
The
ordered.
numbers? Yes, it's starting with these slides, so.
Not necessarily on the economic development.
Yeah, the economic development is.
Oh, I see.
Okay. We'll show you how that does.
Housing it does.
And lastly, I wanted to cover the brownfield. I wanted to talk about some compliance and policy directions that we're thinking about for 2019. To be able to talk about, staff has been working towards a draft policy to also work with the Downtown Economic Growth Association that Andrew Kahn and his group have been putting together. How will we work together between the downtown and the city neighborhoods? When it comes to brownfields, in the past we've worked throughout the city, but with the new DAGA coming, there's an opportunity for Andrew and his group to take that on with the DAGA work. And so we're working on a policy between the two of us about how those, what the capacity of the two organizations are when it comes to brownfield and TIF and those types of activities. Additionally, we're looking at community benefit agreements that we may be able to put together when we're selling property and providing incentives. And the addition of the Corridor Improvement Authority implementations. As you know, we've already adopted the Northside Cultural Business District, and that Corridor Improvement Authority will be formed over the next year.
Madam Director, so what does it mean when you say community benefits agreements, we're looking into, or I don't know what the term you would use, but I guess I'm wanting a clear status of where we are with that work and where will we be and when we will be.
So right now, we're really working with developers on more of a good faith effort and telling them that we would like to see, for example, if we're going to give a developer so many years of TIF, if they're asking us for property then we've been saying we want to see 10% of their units in the affordable range. And we've been really clear about below 80% city AMI when we say that. And we've had a lot of developers, almost all of them that we've been working with, who have been complying with that. But again, it's not a written policy. It's not something that you all have adopted. And we've been asking for 10%. Maybe we should be asking for more. The other part of community benefits agreements that we've been looking at best practices in other cities also include kind of above and beyond. So depending on different industries, we've talked about how that if we're giving a certain amount of incentives to a company, then would they support community? How can they support the neighborhood directly? So if they're going to locate, let's say, a large industry on the east side, 50 employees, $15 million investment, then we could ask for 10% of the investment to be put back into the neighborhood in a certain way. And so we're exploring the idea of what kinds of community benefit agreements can we think about, and really kind of push the envelope towards what kinds of investments can be directed towards specific neighborhoods.
So for my commissioner friends here, I'm a huge fan of what they're doing in Grand Rapids. They're calling them voluntary equitable development agreements. They just instituted their medical marijuana, and have been pretty aggressive in regards to hopes and expectations. So it's one thing when we're, and Clyde will tell us, in this state, there's actually state law that does not allow us to have community benefit agreements. That's why they call them volunteer equitable development agreements. But with these, they, especially with this marijuana stuff, they were able to put in a lot of stipulations because we were in the process of developing ordinances every community. And there's everything from how you're expected to engage in community, how many people you're expected to hire, and because, now we opted not to do this, and some of us wanted this, but because they vet them, they vet who comes forward, you gain points, just like in public safety. You gain points for being local, you gain points for other things, and that the higher your points, the first to be reviewed, so you're first in line, which is the key thing in regards to this. So they went the other way. We took a different approach, not wanting to be the choosers and determining. I think partly because we did that gave us less options in this area. We have other things that do allow us to do some community benefit stuff, but I think as we're thinking about what we're going to be doing next regarding any new opportunities we have to become aggressive in this space, that there's impact in our neighborhoods, there's impact for low-income people of color. There's things that we can do, and we have to be better versed in understanding that. I encourage you to look at Grand Rapids and what they did with medical marijuana. It's pretty aggressive, pretty impressive. Mayor Bliss she's pulling no punches in regards to equality and impacting the citizens that are at the lowest end of the spectrum in regards to their financial capabilities, really being aggressive and trying to find ways to make sure that we're gaining everything we can from developers that want to build whatever they want to build or do whatever they want to do. So I would look at that, and Mayor Bliss and her team are more than happy to meet with us, talk with you, particularly commissioners, in regards to this. We have a lot of opportunity we're really on the table.
Staff is also meeting with a group that worked in the city of Jackson. Jackson is also doing some really progressive things with community benefit agreements. So we're looking at several different, we'd love to bring them back to you.
Actually, just looking at the schedule, this might be a good time. Are you done with economic development? Good time to break for dinner? And then we can come back and hit
Yeah, let's do that. Let's try to be back by 1:45 at the least. If we can get back by 22, that'd be better. Okay. And we reconvene.
All right. Well, we're going to start getting back into 2019 projects and programs. Thank you.
back.
More up there.
Throwback.
And we've got Public Services Director James Baker and Rebecca Kick here. So they're going to walk you through some projects in streets and planning.
So first, we're going to update you on the jurisdictional transfer. We're going to talk about the why. We're going to talk about the how. So first, jurisdictional transfer is the Michigan Department of Transportation streets, including West Kalamazoo Avenue, West Michigan, East Michigan Avenue, go to Stadium Drive, Westnedge and Park Streets, part of Kings Highway and Riverview Drive, coming back to the city from DOT. And it's ultimately about choices. And those choices are to calm traffic, to connect our neighborhoods to downtown by healing our neighborhoods so that we have more access. People need access to our downtown. They need access to jobs. They need access across neighborhoods. And right now, access is currently prioritized by those who move through our city, not to those who come to our city. And right now, the idea of jurisdictional transfer, like I said, about when I talk about choices, right now with the standards that the Michigan Department of Transportation has, does not meet our traffic practices that we want to institute based on Imagine Kalamazoo and the vision that people have for transportation in our city. They are really working on past traffic practices. We would like to bring new ideas, new designs, and practices that create safer transportation and access to our downtown. So based on that, our first steps in being able to even think about these streets in a different way, and that can come in a multitude of different designs, but we won't know until we can get to the details of going out and really getting back into the community and start re-engaging them on some new ideas. But first, the streets really need to come into our possession so that we can start to talk about that. So I'll let James talk a little bit about how that could happen.
So we're talking about a jurisdictional transfer of ownership, and that takes what MDOT currently controls in terms of streets and passes that over to the city. Then the city would control that. We had a question come up earlier about street funding. How does that break down between the different streets? We have three main categories of street funds right now. We have trunk lines. That's MDOT controlled streets. And basically our funding source for trunk lines, because we do not own it, is that we're just paid for the maintenance. So whatever maintenance we perform, we're paid. It's almost like a force account. The next step of funding is major streets funding. There are requirements for a street to be a major street, dealing with traffic volumes, speeds, percent commercial traffic, all those kind of details go into that. Major street funding is paid for through Act 51, which comes from your gas taxes. Local street is a less qualification of street. Also bears in mind traffic volumes, that sort of thing. Local streets also gets dollars from Act 51. We do that through an Act 51 dispersion where we take major streets dollars and push those down to local streets. Another benefit that major streets have is that they're eligible for federal funding through our Metropolitan Planning Organization, which here locally is CATS. So if we have a street that's a major by classification and it needs funding for pavement repairs, we can apply through our Metropolitan Planning Organization to seek federal highway dollars for that street. Those then are then ranked and prioritized countywide, and we find that if they're a major arterial and they carry more traffic, they're going to be higher in those prioritizations for those federal dollars. So getting back to the MDOT streets and the transfer of ownership, if we became owners, we would be the owning agency for those streets. We would get annual revenues from Act 51 from gas taxes that would pay for maintenance of those streets. We're also in agreement with MDOT right now. We're working through a transfer agreement, and within that agreement is a call out for $11.7 million that would come to the city to pay for maintenance and repairs of the street over and above what Act 51 pays for already. In addition to that one-time transfer of funds from MDOT, we'll also be eligible as the new owners of those streets to apply through our Metropolitan Planning Organization maintenance dollars, or more mainly capital dollars in terms of the streets, in terms of maintenance, pavement preservation, everything like that. Those MPO dollars, the federal highway dollars, can also be used for other opportunities such as CMAQ, which is congestion mitigation and air quality. That really has to do more with the traffic signalization. So to round that out, really there's a lot of funding sources that are still available to us. In fact, it even opens up more doors of funding opportunity for us when we take ownership of these streets.
Questions? Commissioner?
So, okay, they're going to give $11.7 million.
Correct.
And that's estimated that would cover the maintenance for the first 10 years? Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's estimated that would cover the major repairs of what we call like the paving for the first 10 years and get them all up to, a good standard.
Right. And then you're saying that you believe that there's other funds after 10 years that would be able, because you said before, we never have enough money to fix our streets now, but this is going to add to our expenses, right?
Right. Well, there's no fund, there's no program in the city, there's no even water, wastewater. We don't have anything 100% funded in terms of we're 100% meeting the needs of the community, or 100% on our replacement schedules, and we're staffed 100% to do our jobs 100% of the time. Nevertheless, we're always going to strive to do as much work as possible. To look at local streets specifically, we have 167 miles of local streets, and we got $1 million a year to fund that. So we're making improvements. We're optimizing our workforce to be able to respond to do more streets per year. So in 19, we're going to do 28 streets. As I talked earlier, 2010-12, we were only doing a handful of streets, half a dozen at best. So we're really looking to optimize the work we do. There's more dollars coming out of Act 51 now than there used to be. That is helping us out. We're also looking at pavement preservation techniques, coming in and doing more chip sealing, spending more dollars on crack sealing, and spending more dollars on streets when they're in the 9, 8, 7, 6 condition level, not waiting for them to get all the way down to that 3, 2, 1 condition level, to where there is no choice but for us to come through and do a reconstruction.
Additionally, with the Downtown Economic Growth Authority, as that authority begins to capture TIF, the TIF plan that you all saw last time does include a lot of infrastructure spending that is specific to the downtown. Because again, these sidewalks, the street trees, the lighting, all of that type of work that isn't being regularly done now is going to be projected for the future of what the downtown is going to look like. And so there will be additional dollars coming in through the DAGA that will also support the work that will be in these downtown streets specifically.
And then the plan is to make one-way streets two-way streets, right?
That's one option, yes.
One option?
The vision calls for traffic calming, for better pedestrian connections, for non-motorized transportation. Some of the best practices do include two-way traffic, and that's something that we have definitely been looking at. But there are also a lot of really great examples from Portland and from Seattle that use one-way streets, but take a lane specifically for bike bus. Take a lane and it's light rail. Take a lane and it's bus rapid transit. It doesn't mean that the solution is necessarily two-way traffic, but the solution should be for 25-mile-an-hour traffic, to make sure that we're creating more access for people, to make sure that the non-motorized transportation is taken care of. So we're really looking at a lot of different alternatives right now, and two-way traffic may rise up there again. But I think that, again, when we're looking at the vision and it says calm the traffic, reduce crashes, make sure non-motorized traffic is a priority, and connect the neighborhoods, connect Western Michigan University, K College, the north side. Stewart neighborhood is split by a 3-lane road. The east side is split. So it's about connectivity, and it's about healing the neighborhood's relationship with the downtown and how to access.
Thank you.
Other questions, Commissioners? So, Directors, the approach you're taking is a comprehensive approach. So this isn't just about one thing, two-way streets. It's not just about, hey, give us the roads back because we want the roads back. But we have work we need to do that we've said we'd do, plans that we've adopted and approved, thinking that we can make this the use of these roads more amenable to all of the visions that we've had in this community. Many of those neighborhood visions, downtown visions, and what have you. So you're going to have engagement opportunities around this.
Yes.
So we could even do, and the Vice Mayor talked about, and I don't know much about Facebook surveys, but you can target residents and Facebook surveys and things of that nature. So we can do all these things and get everyone's voice on this, so there would be opportunity.
Oh yeah, James and we've started to kind of think through, if the jurisdictional transfer comes through, what kind of engagement we want to do, and it's going to be over the next year. We know that this is not just going to be like a few months of some kind of planning exercise, but we know that there's going to be multiple contacts, multiple outreach, lots of focus groups, and that's really what we would like to plan on doing for the entire year of 2019.
And you talked about new technologies, other ways to look at this. So the best expertise we have here is that this makes sense from our folks. Okay. All right. Others comments? Okay.
One of our projects that we're looking at to do in 2019, this is one project that's a component of what we call our Intelligent Transportation System projects, is going to be a train traffic detouring mechanism that we'll put in place to help alert drivers. So we're not detouring the trains, we're detouring traffic around the trains. And the way this system works, it's an interactive, smart transportation piece of technology is that we mount these sensors. They use audible technology to detect when a train comes. So they're not listening for the train horn, they're listening for vibrations and different things that are signature elements of train movement. What that then does is it talks then to would be mounted computerized message boards that would be about the size of a 48 by 24 sign or a 48 by 36 sign that would say, train blocking downtown, seek alternate route. So we could have these boards up in place like at Gold Road as you come down on Riverview. We would have them on Michigan Ave before you hit Park and Westnedge. And then along those routes, we'll have alternate route marking signs that say, for train detour, take this road, to M43. It's, if you've ever been on, say, Kilgore Road, and you see the I-94 emergency route that's signing you, hey, if there's emergency on 94, take Kilgore, and you see those around. So the train flow system would sense when a train's down there blocking downtown, trigger this automation that automatically comes up, and now drivers, motorists are going to be engaged to go ahead and to start taking those different routes. We know through downtown we can move a lot of vehicles through our new roundabout that we just completed. We can take folks down Ransomer North, get them through the roundabout, get them on goal, and get them back out if they're going M43 and out. If they're using business loop, I-194, coming through town, and they want to get back out to the highway, they want to get out Kings Road and that sort of thing, we can take them down Westonage to Vine, take them out Vine to Mills, Mills to King, and from there we can take them out. So we can route and sign these areas and have the train messaging there in place. It's not going to fix everything. It's not going to get the train out of downtown, but it's a piece of intelligent transportation system that we can put in place to help notifying drivers in real time of what's going on.
Is there a long-term solution that actually involves expanding the rail yard at parallel to Michigan Avenue, East Michigan?
So I've had lots of conversations with that group, and it's always on the table. I'm guessing it's their call when they're ready to finalize purchasing property, and we're always ready to work with them.
Is there any leverage we can generate through the townships and the city and our state legislators?
We've all been at the table together, so it's.
Okay, what's the long term?
It's on the table,
okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. I think additionally, I'm going to bring it back to jurisdictional transfer just for a second as well. James and I have talked extensively that if we're able to get jurisdictional transfer, then we have more control over the signaling that's also being that's tied together along Michigan and Kalamazoo, and how you can also make sure that traffic isn't backing up in certain ways as people are coming into town. We would then have control over the overall signaling that's in the city.
So, Director Baker, just if you say one more time, this will not fix everything, I'll tell you why I'm having you do that in a moment.
Okay, yeah. The train detour will not fix everything. Motorists will have to be aware of the surroundings and then get on a detour route to go around the train. Those detour routes exist today. Folks might not know about them, or they might not be prompted to get onto them.
And we know that not every time you take a detour are you going to be able to outthink the train. So there's some times that the train is on the entire route. So as we said, we know this will not fix everything.
And detours don't know your destination. Your destination is to go right down to Food Dance, and we're detouring you to go all the way out and get on Gull Road, then you have to know where your destination is. So the train downtown does have a lot of impacts, so a lot of business and travelers, we understand that. We're trying to help that out a little bit, try to break that pile up, if you will, that happens down there. But there will continue to be impact for folks. That's their only way through.
And this is tied in with like Waze and different navigation software?
Yeah, so this is also tied in with your Google and everything else, Google Maps. So when this activates, it will show up on Google Maps if you've got, if you're taking a trip and you're being prompted in your vehicle where to turn, this will be a part of that as well. So one of our projects that we're continuing on in 2019 is a joint agency flood inundation mapping project. The City of Kalamazoo is working with the USGS and the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the National Weather Service, to map out the entire bathymetric features of Portage Creek, Axtell Creek, Kalamazoo River, from the dam all the way up to Mazel. And what we're doing is then we're building surface profiles that we can then perform hydraulic mapping on, or hydraulic modeling on, to simulate any given flow of river, creek, and simulate what those impacts are to individual property owners. And we use this with our GIS system. So what that enables us to do when we have rains or flooding that's going to happen or has happened, this system is interactive, and then you can look your parcel directly and see what the impacts are. This viewer be interactive. We can show it, model it on the website. We can share that with our partners in the media and really work to get that word out faster when there are flood risk and flood impacts for folks in Kalamazoo. Another great benefit of this project is that we've got Army Corps engineers here with us right now doing work. They're seeing some of the topography and some of the bathymetric features of the river, and they're starting to interact with us and understand, hey, there's future opportunities here, there's future projects. We're seeing this, we'd like to do that, and we've got the ability then to apply for these projects because now the survey work is done, and it will move us forward on any participation in future Part 205 projects. A Part 205 project covers up to $10 million of flood control improvements at a local cost, a city cost of $100,000. So the timeline for this, we'll be working on this through the year 2021. It's a long timeline. It's a big project. It's a lot of behind-the-scenes technology stuff that goes into it. But when we're done, any parcel owner or anybody in the city can use GIS and see what the water level is going to do at their parcel.
Great.
James, related to flooding and jurisdictional transfer, can you talk a little bit about how having control over West Edge and in Park during a flooding event could help?
Yeah, certainly. There's dual streets, Park and West Edge. We commonly see flood impacts on Park. It would be a great benefit for the motoring public as well as emergency response if we could run two-way up West Edge during a flood situation. It's possible, we can do it, we just have to have the authority to put it in place. What we would do in that scenario is we'd actually create a traffic control plan and a maintenance of traffic plan ahead of time with our engineers, share that with our contractors that bring us the barricades and the yellow cones, and then have that plan ready to go in the event of a flood. So if a flood does happen, we've got the MOT in place, we've got the temporary traffic control plan in place, we can bring it out and set it up.
And MDOT hasn't been supportive of us doing that?
No, they haven't been supportive of that plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect segue into the climate action plan. So as an update, obviously we started the climate action plan a couple of years ago, and based on some staff capacity and losing some staff, we have now hired a new staff. Her name is Jamie McCarthy. She comes to us from the Michigan Watershed Council. She has expertise. She's an environmental scientist, which was something that we were really lacking on our team. She's a very strategic hire for us. It's kind of like 1 foot in planning and 1 foot in public services. She's also a pretty amazing bridge between our two departments as it comes to environmental issues and water as well. She's worked with John Paquin in many capacities already through her work with the Watershed Council. So she brings to us the expertise to be able to bring this climate action plan and many other things that we're working on in our departments to fruition. So first of all, we do have, as Vice Mayor Knott asked prior, we do have a timeline for us to bring you the plan in the third quarter of this year. Of course, that's our benchmark. We've got a lot of outreach to do. As we are paralleling this effort with the next slide I'm going to bring up, which is also the natural features protection, for which you voted on a moratorium so that we had time to craft an ordinance for. These two plans are, the plan for the climate action plan and then the ordinance for the natural features protection are very sort of inextricably linked right now. And so our first steps are with the climate action plan, which was started by Paul Clements and his class at Western Michigan University a couple of years ago, gave us several recommendations for us to start working on right away. And so one of them was to look at weatherization of our homes and to make sure that we looked at our zoning ordinance in terms of landscaping impervious surfaces, and green building requirements as well. And so all three of those things we've been working with staff and other developers, particularly when we're working on brownfield projects, to begin to think about best practices and standards that we can introduce. For the natural features protection overlay, we have, again, we have a timeline that we're marching towards. This December and February, we are working on the draft ordinance with the technical committee. We have our first meeting scheduled for January with our technical committee. In February and March, we'll be meeting with coalition groups and hosting open community meetings on the draft. We already have one public meeting that we're starting to advertise with the Oakland Winchell Neighborhood Organization that will be late in February. And we will be bringing forward to you that draft in April, end of April, beginning of May this year. Any questions on either the climate action plan or the natural features? Complete Streets is a policy that helps us keep our processes consistent and aligned with the design and engagement towards the community vision that was created through Connected City and through Safe Community and Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. This aligns our local street work with agencies like the Kalamazoo Area Transportation Study, the Michigan Department of Transportation, and Federal Highway Administration funding. Many of those groups already have Complete Streets policies that we must follow. This helps us to create a Complete Streets policy that, in absence of those funding mechanisms, that we are still following the same types of process. This assists us in evaluation of streets for also what we call road dieting. So road dieting is typically reducing 4 lanes to 3 lanes. We've done 5 of these in the city in the last 4 years. This may include when you reduce the lanes from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, sometimes bike lanes, parking on street, bus lanes, or other alternative travel routes. Road dieting achieves several goals. Number 1 is a reduction in crashes that typically happen as people are trying to pass in and out of each other, because if someone's turning left and there's a car stopped, what's the first inclination? You weave around, instead of having a dedicated left turn lane which traffic passes by. So crashes are typically reduced. The national average is around 47%. Traffic flows to posted speeds. So when we did the road diet on Portage Street it's been 4 years ago now, we had posted speeds of over 42 miles an hour, and those have now been brought back into line of actual posted speeds, which are 30 and 35 miles an hour. So safe access to those who take the bus and ride a bicycle daily are now protected because they have a specific lane that is given to them. Road diets are also fiscally responsible. In order to design roads for all users and accommodating all users, we are using our dollars more fiscally responsibly because we're not just catering to one type of access. Additionally, I want to tell you that this is not just about getting people out of their cars. That's not what Complete Streets is about, and that's not what road dieting is about. What it is about is everyone has safe passage on our streets. And this is about being responsive to those vulnerable residents who traverse our streets because they do not have a car, they do not have a license, they must take the bus, they must ride a bike. Let's think about those folks who are under the age of 16 or over the age in order to continue to have their driver's license. They don't have a choice. Their choice is what we decide for them and how we design our streets to accommodate them. Any questions on this? Just a quick update on neighborhood planning projects. As you know, this year we've adopted the North Side Plan, the East Side Plan, and the Vine Plan into the master plan this year, which was our goal, was to get these 3 neighborhoods across that finish line, and they all did so, including Vine winning that award from the Michigan Association of Planning as well. And so I wanted to give you some quick implementation things that we're already looking forward to in each of these neighborhoods. So in the north side, they're looking to finalize location to install some murals. One location has already been finalized, which will be the Ecumenical Center on the north side facing street, I believe. And we are also developing a branding for the Northside Cultural Business District. So we're looking at installing banners and possibly creating stickers for resident-owned businesses so that you know when you visit that business that they not only that they also are a resident of the North Side and that you're helping them with their business. On the east side, we're working with Metro Transit. We're going to be improving bus stops. So we're going to be purchasing some benches, some shelters, and doing lighting. We've also been talking about working with some artists to make sure that those benches and maybe some of those shelters are a little bit more creative. They are also looking to install murals, and we're working with Anna Rader at the Land Bank on several of those commercial properties, which are in kind of the commercial center part of East Main Street to identify those building locations. In Vine, we've already started historic property maintenance trainings so that we can look at helping people with their windows and woodwork and how to maintain a historic property and do weatherization, etc. We are also overhauling the parking in the neighborhood. One of the big things that was called out in that plan was the 22 different parking regulations that exist, and so really working to help make that more navigable. They're also installing bike racks in commercial areas. I know that they've chosen all of the locations that they want to do bike racks, and so now they're going to work with some local artists to do some very creative bike racks, and we will be supporting all of these projects as well. Any questions about neighborhood plans? I'll turn this over to Director Fletcher.
Could I ask economic development question that I didn't get into before? So I often hear anecdotally, and whether it's happens or not, and I've raised this before, about the subjectivity of some of our inspection work. So whether that's inspections by housing inspectors or inspections by fire marshal, that people get in these conversations and the law says this, and so we're going in to inspect building code, and they meet everything, but then out of our mouths come, well, we would like, this is what I'm hearing, or I would like you to, or da-da-da-da, and I'm wondering, how are we auditing our inspection work? How are we ensuring that people are meeting the standards that we expect and that they're not running off in a subjective way? I've mentioned this before, and I still believe we need to think about this. I think we should have body cameras on folks, more than just public safety, because body cameras are about interacting with the public. They're not about necessarily specific law enforcement. Sometimes they're used for that, but they're not always about that. They're about knowing what happened at that scene or at that incident. I'm still not understanding why we can't explore that, even pilot or experiment. So, or someone needs to help me understand our auditing processes we have regarding our personnel that are interacting with the folks in the field. I'm sure 311 is going to talk about their auditing practices. What are ours? Or what are our plans?
Do you want me to answer some of that? I can answer
sure.
Some of that
I'll take that.
Okay. I know. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain and I, as well as City Planner Christina Anderson and Assistant City Chief Brian Tibbetts, we've met several times to talk about economic development and the fire marshal and those practices with the building official as well to get us all on the same page. I've shared with them the financial frustrations that I hear from developers once they've gone through a site plan review. And typically, we've already put their financial packages together with the MEDC or MISHDA or all of these other funding streams before they even get through site plan review, right? And so then we get through site plan review, and then all of a sudden we need an $80,000 sprinkler system and a new fire hydrant and, you know, they haven't met building requirements X, Y, and Z. Not to belabor our best friends in Grand Rapids too much, but one of the best practices that we're looking at is what they call their LUD system. And what that does is it prioritizes going through site plan review, plan review, some of these other bigger reviews before you get to the economic development piece of it, so that you're not, so that you're aware of all the financial constraints up front, so that we can be more responsive on the back side of it. It's just one piece of the puzzle, but I did at least want to acknowledge that we have been in conversations, and I would like to talk to you more about the body cameras for building officials.
Well, for me, it's about expectations.
Right.
Is it clear what's expected of a fire marshal when they go in to inspect buildings? Is it thought it's all spelled out in code? If we have code, we don't let our public safety officers run around and do things outside the law. I want to make sure we're not allowing that, whether it's through after-action reviews we're using to audit, or whether it's through random audits, whether it's somebody accompanying folks, and whether we have focus groups, which I've talked about this with Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, focus groups of developers, folks that own rental property, to hear those, get our best engagement with those folks, to hear what they're experiencing with our individuals. I think that's the least of the expectations that we should have that we're reviewing our work. So I look forward to hearing more how we're going to be doing that. Thank you.
Director Fletcher, Parks and Rec.
Mr. Director.
Good evening. So happy to give you an update and look ahead for our Parks and Recreation Department. And before I get started, I want to acknowledge our Deputy Director, Mr. McBarry, he's in the back of the room, and then Steve Zinnerberg. They were our project guys, if you will, for the 6 projects that we completed in 2018. Probably saw some of that work in Creighton Park if you drive that street very often. But we've got a lot coming up in 2019 as well. We're working on a couple of new segments of the KRVT, working with Director Baker's team to plan new segments from Walnut to Pitcher, and then a segment that is to the south from Lake to Reed Street. So continuing to plan that out. There's some right-of-way and things that we have to work through, but with Director Baker's team, we'll plow through that. Get some more of the KRVT done. Hopefully I go the right way here. Rockwell Park. In 2019, we will add a building with, thanks to some FFE funding, building similar to the building in LaCrone Park, which will have restrooms, an expanded open space and storage, and that will allow us to add a super rec program to that site. So the neighborhood has been asking for that for a while, so we want to have a safe place for the kids on the east side to be in the summer. Reed Street Park, this piece of playground equipment that you see here is probably 1A and 1B with a piece that was in Rockwell of my least favorite pieces of equipment. That one's been there quite a while. Reed Street will get a complete facelift, much like Henderson Tot Lot and Davis Street Park. It will get some walking paths. It'll have a basketball hoop with some other paved games like Foursquare and Hopscotch, those kinds of things, a small pavilion, some new benches. We're looking at some real strategic ways to create the buffer along Portage Road there so that kids don't go right out into the street. So looking at some ways to do that economically as well, because we don't want to do chain link fence and we want it to look good. So the other thing that we'll have there is we'll add a Gaga pit. And we had a very good turnout to the initial planning meeting with the neighborhood. We had several neighbors that came out and residents that came out and helped us develop a concept plan for Reed Street Park. So we're excited about that one. Upjohn Park, that is our one of our accessible playgrounds. Some of that park has sand and then also has the engineered wood fiber. And the wood fiber gets thrown around, and then anytime we have a flood situation, it tends to float away and go downstream. So this is another project through the Foundation for Excellence. We're going to do more poured-in-play surface, which is the rubber surface. So it won't leave us anymore, and it's better for the kids. It'll be more like this surface that you see over here. Bronson Park, we will get started with Bronson Park probably late in the summer. We want to get in as much lunchtime live as possible, obviously. We will work on electrical upgrades, lighting, sound improvements. Want to thank Deputy City Manager Chamberlain for coming up with the idea for the Honor Walk, which will be the arched pathway on the east end of the park that will very thoughtfully and strategically place the monuments that are in the park. We are engaged with a lot of the groups that have placed markers in the park just to make sure they're comfortable with what we're doing there. We've worked with Sharon Ferraro in her office to really think about how we would place those. We came up with a really nice chronological order of everything that's in the park. So continue to meet with those groups to make sure everybody's comfortable with what we're going with. We've had very good reception to that. People are excited about the information signs that'll be available to denote where things are on that honor walk. One of the things we heard during the master plan process was, people don't know what's in there, and they can't find a particular marker or stone, so they will be able to find that more easily. There will be a QR code that they can look stuff up on their phone and get more information, so I think that'll be really helpful. Springmont Tot Lot is going to get some new equipment. This little playground, if you will, used to have a big concrete tube that obviously wasn't up to code, so we removed that, and working with Director Kick and her team, and the neighborhood to secure some community development block grant dollars to make some playground improvements to the Tot Lot. And then we will continue to increase participation in our youth programs like All Things Possible, our Super Rec program. Obviously, you see the t-shirt there. The Super Rec sites, all but one, pretty much had full participation daily throughout the summer. And when we were full at one site, we were able to take kids to another site if their parents were okay with that. So we're able to transport kids when we have a full El Concilio site or Oakwood neighborhood site. We will also continue to work with KRESA and make sure we can improve the Summer Youth Employment Program. I think that's
Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Mayor. I got two questions. You guys are doing great stuff. In Rockwell, are you still going to have the basketball court on the other side of the street or something? How's that going to work?
Yeah, it is on the other side. And in first thing in the spring, we're working with Director Baker and Teresa to get the signage and the crosswalk up so that people can more safely cross over to the other side of the park.
The second one, I don't know if it's you or who it is. We were going to have those information things about the Native American heritage and all. What's happening with that?
So that group, I understand, continues to meet to discuss options. I'm not really sure. I think DCM Chamberlain has been meeting with that group, but I think they're still continuing to work toward what's going to happen in Bronson Park.
Commissioner Stein?
I wanted to let you go first.
Okay. Yes, the education group is meeting. They're moving beyond just Bronson Park, though, to more of an education, working with the tribe. Mm-hmm. And so a couple things that they're working on is one, working a program with Kalamazoo Public Schools as far as a curriculum. working with still preliminary discussions, but going on, which is good news, about a program and an educational piece at the museum downtown. We've got a program for new street signs that would identify the boundaries of the former reservation. And then finally working in, again, preliminarily, but some artwork for the four corners of the former reservation. So we've got all those different things, and that group is still meeting about monthly and working on an action plan to actually implement each one of those.
Commissioner Slick?
Yeah, so I know we had a few folks, native residents of Kalamazoo, who were hoping to be a part of that education committee. Do you know if we've had a chance to reach out to any of them, or if any of them have been added now to the committee?
I can check. I don't think there's been anybody new.
Okay.
Since they've transitioned away from Bronson Park toward a broader education mission.
Right.
I don't think. I'll ask.
Okay. If not, is there a way that they can get plugged in? Because I've got a small handful of folks, I think, that I mentioned to you, Manager Ritzma, within like a month or two after we made the decision on the fountain. So if you could just maybe after this let me know how to get them plugged in.
Could you talk a little bit about the funding for that? Is there adequate funding to do what the Education Committee has come up with so far? Is there going to be any problem with that, as far as you can tell?
Different components have different funding.
Mm-hmm.
The tribe has already given the city and accepted a grant for the street signs. Mm-hmm. And so our next step is to work on actual fabrication of that. We're still in the preliminary discussions with the museum, so we haven't even set a budget regarding how that would work. And the larger artwork pieces are cost estimates in a few $100,000. And so a separate fundraising campaign for that would be needed. That has not yet started.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I will turn it over to Chief Thomas.
Chief of Public Safety, Gary and Thomas.
Evening, Chief.
Good evening. So I'm just going to cover a couple things tonight on these two slides. It says Strategic Operations Center. But I want to talk a little bit about our work session we had back in May when we talked about our strategic planning process. We're well into that here in December. And we are working on a very comprehensive 3-year, which will dovetail into a 5-year strategic plan. And what that strategic plan does is it gives us 21 strategies in 7 pillar areas that we discussed earlier this year for a total of 63 strategies over the next 3 years. So part of that, and as we talked earlier that year, was the Strategic Operations Center. And one of the reasons we want to do that, as we talk so much, is to make data-driven decisions, not only in our targeted method of approaching crime prevention, but also resource deployment. So through the Strategic Operations Center, we're hoping to take that data and really be able to use it to make this city safer, to look at where those crime trends are, because it's going to be real time. So versus now I get the crime data once a week, it's a week old by then. What we want something is much more dynamic, and we've been working with IT with some of their strategies and data. You'll see OpenGov is going to have our crime data on there as well. So this Strategic Operations Center will really focus what we do as far as crime prevention, as far as investigating crimes, but additionally resource allocation. So as we all know, we need to know where that we should deploy not only our police officers, but as being public safety, our fire apparatus, and where are we having the majority of those calls. So this is really going to up our game. You'll see a lot of bigger cities have this. Sometimes they call it a real-time crime center if they're strictly law enforcement, or a fusion center. We've also reached out to our other local partners, state police and other jurisdictions, to hopefully that they'll partner in doing this with us so that we can all use this data and work together in moving this area forward. I think the Emergency Operations Center. So one of the other things we'll do with the Strategic Operations Center, so if you don't know where it's going to be located, it's going to be located where the former dispatch center was at Crosstown, where we had the co-located dispatch. So we're going to use that space not only for the Strategic Operations Center, but also as our own EOC, Emergency Operations Center. So if we were to have another situation such as the flood, the train derailment, or something like that, that would be within the city, our location that we would go and have all our resources that we could then deploy from there. So we've been getting staff all trained citywide up through the incident command system. So as we look forward and have the space and are able to have those type of operations, we all have the training in order to manage those type of scenes along with the county EOC. So I just want to talk a little bit about crime prevention and community outreach. Some of the things that we're looking for in 2019 as we work through our strategic plan. So we had our internal strategic plan meeting here at the end of November. In all those pillar areas, those have not been finalized. They'll be finalized here in the next 2 weeks as I meet with all those pillars. But some of the things we're looking at in 2019, and it's also continuing some of the things that we already do, such as group violence intervention. We're also looking at a prisoner reentry initiative that we're trying to work with prisoners that are re-entering so that we can bridge that gap and make them successful in our community, as well as a homeless outreach team. So we're trying to form that and work with our local community partners to see what role public safety officers play in the success of those residents we have here in our city. A crime reduction unit. So when I talked earlier this year and again tonight about our focused approach, we know that a very small percentage of the population commits the crimes. And we need to be very focused on who, that when we go out there to do enforcement actions, that they're the correct folks that are committing these crimes. And that crime reduction team, whether it's with our violent crimes, our shootings, we have a big problem with property crimes right now, that we're able to focus as we have things emerge. Sometimes we have a string of larcenies. That would be something that the crime prevention unit would then focus on so that we can address those immediate problems. And we'll be getting that data to really drive that team from the Strategic Operations Center. Some of the other things, we're going to increase our involvement in Pale Police Athletic League, which we started this past year in 2018. Hopefully, that's a program that has to grow over time. But now we've planted that seed, and Assistant Chief Coakley is very passionate about that. If you talk to him today, he'll tell you he became a law enforcement officer because he was involved in Pale when he grew up. So we really want to help our youth and look at different ways to reach out to them. We'll continue also with our Pastors on Patrol. We talked about it in 2018. So that really got off the ground, I'd say late summer, early fall. It's been very successful. And we want to increase our traffic enforcement based on the complaints that we're getting in certain areas. So we really monitor and track where we're getting complaints reference traffic, and we target our traffic enforcement in those areas.
Right, traffic enforcement. I have a question regarding the location of these removable
those warning traffic radar?
No, the speed bumps, like on Maple Street.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the result of that so far? What's your assessment of that?
I really can't speak on that, and maybe Director Baker can. He placed those. I don't have that data.
Okay.
We do have those 2 speed trailers. You'll see them. That'll tell you your speed as you're going down the street. We do take those and we move those based on different complaint areas. And then as they're moved and weekly, we'll get the data from there, which shows all the traffic that traveled, highest speed, lowest speed, median speed, and we move those all over sort of as a traffic enforcement, but all they're to gather that data, right? So we look at that data once, and that's sort of the goal of the Strategic Operations Center. Okay, let's take that data, and as we look at going out to traffic enforcement and the data that we're getting from those speed bumps, what does that tell us about where we should be doing traffic enforcement to make it a safer roadway for pedestrians, motorists, and non-motorized vehicles?
So those traffic speed recording devices and the things that have the flashers on them, do they record? Is there a record of the number of people, the number of vehicles that trigger that go over a certain point?
It triggers all vehicles.
All
so
vehicles?
It tracks all vehicles. So we'll see an average of different spikes of the day. Or you may be able sometimes to go back to a call for service. Hey, at 2 a.m. every night, someone goes down this road way too fast. And we're able to go back and say, yep, that does happen. So let's make sure we put a directed patrol on that street at that time.
Okay, so there's no way of differentiating traffic that's going at the correct speed versus people who are going at a higher speed.
No, it'll tell you because it's usually just 3 or 4 miles over the median speed. So it records every single one and then averages and shows us what speeds they're all going.
Oh, okay. So do you see a decrease in the average speed from the time you first put those things in place?
You do see if they're up there for 14 days. By the end of the 14 days, you'll still have your spikes, but for the most part, they'll just be 3 or 4 miles over that. But it's continuous reinforcement. Once we take them down, 6 months later, they're back in a lot of the same locations.
Yeah. Well, okay. I just there's a lot of information there that I'm just hoping we're using. That's all.
We hope to be using it more efficiently in the future. We absolutely do.
Other questions for Chief? Chief, with your crime reduction unit, so you know, sometimes we say thank goodness for wintertime because when certain behaviors decrease. And I've been out with neighbors in certain areas at nighttime at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and we've had these challenges with these huge parties and the extrain. Are we going to be strategically planning towards what's happening with that? I've talked to other communities. It's interesting. We are, of all the mayors I spoken to in Michigan, which have been a lot, we're the only ones that are seeing this. It's kind of interesting.
With the X-train?
X-train.
Yeah,
So,
it is very unique to us because I've spoke to other law enforcement leaders. The same thing, looking for those additional strategies.
Yeah, I thought there were other things that other cities would be doing, but I'm speaking with Matty Jordan, I'm speaking with Mr. Cole, one over off of Cobb, I'm speaking, on and on and on, and these people can't even live in their houses because of the craziness that's going on.
And it's very challenging, and it comes down to staffing. And having so many people that have to deal with, let's say, over 100 vehicles driving erratically, you need over 100 officers to stop those vehicles. And usually, if there's more than one passenger in a vehicle, that's several officers, and they get tied up with that one car, and it continues. It is very, very challenging. But when you talk about the crime reduction unit and things like that, those are strategies to put in place. And that data that we get, we know where that occurs, and some of the strategies we put in place is try to get it shut down before it even starts. And a lot of it's based on calls for service that night of what occurs. But that is a huge challenge for public safety. Huge challenge for public safety.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Bring up Gina Viviano, our 311 customer service manager, to preview 311 for 2019.
Good evening.
Good
evening. I just wanted to start with letting you know a little bit about 311 as kind of a primer. The Federal Communications Commission set aside N11 numbers several years ago, so 911, you can call for an emergency in any city that has it. 811 is MISDIG. 311 is governmental, non-emergency phone calls. So if you have a burning building, you call 911. If you have a burning question, you call 311. So we take calls on potholes or water main breaks or how to pay my bill with utilities, anything like that. So the way that the city has always functioned with contacts to the city is similar to this. We have all of these departments, all of these questions. National average is somewhere around 6 times to get the answer that you want. They will make some kind of contact with someone somewhere until they get the answer that they want. We were created as a customer service division to kind of streamline that, hopefully through 311. So I will explain to you what that will be. So 311 is a model that's functioned after one call to City Hall. So in Kalamazoo, there are 2 different models. One is a transfer center, which is like a switchboard. Somebody calls, you transfer the call wherever they want. The other is an answer center. That's what we're going to do. We will answer every phone call that we can when it comes in. We will also use scripts. So the departments whose phones we're answering tell us exactly what to say, how to say it, what software program to go into, when they need to be notified of a call, when we can handle it ourselves, and it will help with efficiencies and it'll streamline things. And all of this is pumped into a software program that will track all of this data for us. We never touch it after we enter it, so it's very pure, and then our data team can use that as part of their resources as well. It's something that we haven't really tracked before in our metrics, but last year the city received about 350,000 phone calls. That includes public safety and metro, so we're going to be around 200,000 with what is left in the organization. We'll streamline that a little bit and find some efficiencies to reduce the number. But we're still going to be between 15,000 and 20,000 phone calls a month that all the departments won't have to answer, and we'll be able to take care of that for them so that they can focus on their business of core services, and we can help provide exceptional customer service. So the next thing I want to let you know is this is the new staff that we hired this year. We have 7 experienced ambassadors, our day-to-day supervisor, and then myself. This is a multi-phase process and a multi-year process. So this year we hired, that's up to speed, and 3 weeks early or more, we answered election calls for the city clerk's office, took on assessing, treasury, water, and wastewater calls. In those 3 weeks, we've taken over 3,000 phone calls already. Nothing's blown up or gone off the rails yet, so we think it's a good thing. Still working on processes and finding that there may be something that we might want to tweak here and there, especially with the utilities. But we're helping people make the payments. We're asking questions about the tax bills that just went out. We're explaining why the tax bills are different this year than last year. So my staff have a lot of information at their fingertips that the departments have provided to us. We're going to continue to keep refining our processes and our scripting throughout the next year as I bring on the rest of the organization. We have about 27 or 28 divisions. We just brought in 4. So we're going to be 2-phased answering calls. So to your question of auditing, we will be monitoring phone calls 4 to 5 times a month per agent. Plus, in the environment that we're in is open office environment. We can pretty much hear every phone call that's going on to some degree anyway. We're also going to do surveys to the community after we're up and running for a while, and have some focus groups when we want to take on additional channels, they're called. So right now we're going to take the phone calls. Another channel is email. Another channel could be Twitter. Another channel could be Instagram. So however the community wants to communicate with us, we will take that on. But first we're going to get everybody up to speed with phones, since that's a big deal for us right now. We will not be live with 311 digits until next winter. So we have to petition the state to get the designation, and we will because we're a municipality. We'll have 2 numbers that we're going to start advertising for the city. One is 311. One is a 10-digit number because we have utility customers who are not in our jurisdictional boundaries that need to be able to get a hold of us. And they'll have to dial the other number. And all of that rolled in together and getting that and getting the whole organization up to speed will take about a year. We'll have a pretty extensive marketing campaign. Mr. Conway is going to help do some really creative, innovative stuff on social media to get the community aware of the 311 number, but we're not deleting any of the current phone numbers either. So if somebody always knows to call the manager's office at 337-8047, they can still do that. If they dial 331, they can also do that. Or 311, they can also do that and get them that way. So that's basically how 311 operates. We'll go into this further and more in depth, I'm sure, when we get to the end of next year, but I wanted to make sure that we give a pretty big shout out to the city of Grand Rapids. Becky Jo Glover is the Director of Customer Service for Grand Rapids. She's been there for 5 years. She has 17 years experience in 311. She created the Miami-Dade County 311 system 17 years ago, which answered calls for 29 municipalities. Then she came to Grand Rapids 5 years ago, did the same thing there, and she offered to help mentor and coach me and the woman who supervises the day-to-day operations for me. Her supervisor's coaching her. They've given us all of their documentation, all of the best practices that they've been using, that Becky Jo's been using for 17 years, and they did it all for free.
I was going to ask that.
It's a value of about $500,000. The reason they did it is because that's what good neighbors should do, is help each other out. And our end of the deal is we'll help somebody else out if they ask in the future. So we've been really, really lucky to have her, and she's pretty nationally known and pretty phenomenal. We've had the support of all of you and her manager, interim manager, Mayor Bliss has been hugely supportive. You've been hugely supportive, and thank you for that. You'll see her, I'm sure, at some point, and I think when we go live with the 311, she'll probably be down here, possibly with her mayor as well. Any questions?
All right. Moving on to organizational improvements, we have our Human Resources Director, Nick Christie, and our Information Technology, actually the CIO for the city, Tim DuBois, IT Director, otherwise known.
Hey, well, good evening. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our major priorities for 2019. And we spent a lot of 2018 looking internally at existing processes. You might remember we blew up the compensation system, made that more modern. Did the same thing with performance management. We're on the very tail end of that. That's going to free up time, resources, energy to look at strength through diversity. And this is an enormous opportunity for the city on a lot of different fronts. What I want to do is, yes? Slide, yes. So what I wanted to do is basically we want to establish an internal council that's going to look at internal and external facing issues. So first and foremost, we could do a lot more in terms of focused recruiting efforts. Are we getting bang for our buck in our current approaches? Probably not. Do our hiring slates reflect the demographics of our local community? I would venture a guess and say probably not. So what we want to do is look at our current approach. Is this really getting us to where we need to be, where we should be? So we're going to get a cross-functional team together, looking at these. What do these groups need? Where are the roadblocks to effective and meaningful hiring? What are we doing to get the word out? Because I'll bet there are a lot of people out in the community who hadn't even really considered a job with the city. We also have two wonderful and deep resources, or more than two really, resources right here with WMU and K College. Want to do a whole lot more with internships. I mean, this is a golden opportunity in a fertile field right here. So we already have somebody coming in January who's going to major in public administration, and he has a passion for HR. So I'll certainly keep that young man busy. But we are going to really focus our efforts in this space. It's going to yield better things. And then the other piece of this, too, is when I mentioned internal-facing efforts, we want to look at our internal culture. Are we creating the most inclusive environment that we can? Not just in terms of attracting people, but retaining them as well. Does everybody feel like they have a voice within our organization? There's lots of low-hanging fruit out there in terms of things like employee resource groups dedicated to advancing careers and opportunities for certain demographics within the city organization. And we have a lot of people who are passionate and eager and want to contribute. One of the things that these groups do really well is prepare earlier career employees for leadership opportunities. I've seen it a lot in my career where somebody who is passionate but maybe not as experienced gets that opportunity to lead and lead cross-functionally, because one great thing that these groups do is break down the organizational silos and get people from different functions talking to each other who might not normally cross paths. So that's going to be a real push in 2019. The other piece of this, too, is we have one more major internal action that we'd like to focus on, and that concerns a formal goals program. We talked about comp. We talked about performance management. Now we want to formalize our goal setting. So my thought is that we have the priorities that are going to come out of this group from the commission, flow on down to City Manager Ritzma, is going to form goals that support the commission's goals, and then down to the CMO, and then down to the department directors, and then all the way down through the organization, cascading that support the larger goals and also tie into Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. So this is actually not just going to be sketching on a piece of paper or anything like that. We have a tool in place that we use for performance management that can also capture goals. And then at year-end 2019, it's not just going to be a matter of, hey, I did X, Y, and Z. No, we're also going to pull up the goals you committed to earlier in the year. How did you perform against those? The last piece of this is a newsflash. Maybe we're not operating as efficiently as we can. There are a lot of different reasons, but one of the major ones is a pretty antiquated human resource information system, or HRIS. There are a lot of good products out there. There are several that actually have direct municipal experience and many customers that they service. And so together with IT, we're going to have and of course our friends in management services, we are going to have a very formal project-based approach to getting a new HRIS in place, hopefully by the end of the year. That's going to be a bear, but this is really needed, and this is going to yield great things in terms of our reporting capabilities, how information flows, being able to do some of the more modern things around tracking metrics and reporting out, and it's going to yield some great things.
Questions?
Wow.
Okay.
You want to pitch in?
Thank you, John.
Okay.
I got a couple more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've heard kind of a theme of efficiency throughout tonight when it comes to technology. I want to continue that, and one of the projects we're looking at for 2019 is to implement Office 365. So upgrades our current versions of Office, which we have 3 different versions throughout the city, none of which are the actual current version of Microsoft Office. So we'll have that, but it allows us then to collaborate and work across the department or across departments all over the city. So it increases our efficiency in that standpoint. The second project that we are looking forward to going live soon is a Freedom of Information Act solution. I won't go into too many details because we do have a plan to have a presentation at a near future commission meeting. So this is a web-based system. It allows for the public to make a request on the website in a web form. Then allows us to track and efficiently respond to it and collaborate again throughout the city to the departments that need to respond to the Freedom of Information Act requests. So those are just a couple of projects we have in 2019 to help increase our efficiency with the use of technology.
Commissioner?
The devices that were in Boston Park to have that be pretty much an active open web access point, is that still in place? Is that what's going to happen with that?
So that actually was a hardware failure, and it's difficult the way that contract was set up for the Wi-Fi access there. Difficult to get the replacement parts. So we're waiting on that piece of it at this point.
Other questions? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right. We're in the last lap here, so I want to call forward our Foundation for Excellence coordinator, Steve Brown, resource specialist. He's going to cover the Youth Mobility Fund.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. Thanks very much for your time. I'm here to kind of lead off the Foundation for Excellence portion this evening by highlighting one particular project that we've been very excited about all year and have been working on all year, and that's called the Youth Mobility Fund. And in short, what this is every high schooler with a KPS ID starting next year will get on the bus as many times as they want. They'll swipe their card, they'll sit down, it's free. That's it. You swipe, you sit down, it's free. That's it. And we would like this to be permanent, and we would like this to really extend mobility to all of our high schoolers and people in the KPS system so that we can get rid of that roadblock that we've heard about countless times for so many programs, which is transportation. How do I get my gifted child to a program when they can't afford the bus? How do I get back from a late sports program when I can't pick them up? We can really eliminate those roadblocks and the roadblocks to take part in countless other out-of-school time programs through the cohort of Kid Network by offering this structural change in the city. So we've worked this year to partner with Kalamazoo Public Schools and with Metro. They're very excited about this, and we're going to really kick this off in the first month of the new year, as well as Kalamazoo Public Library, so that we'll have one card that is a library card, a high school ID for KPS, as well as a free bus pass. So this is a really tremendous structural change that we think is just going to open the doors for tremendous things for our young people, for them to work, for them to help take care of their own families, for them to pursue education, and for them to really just lead the lives that they need with mobility no longer as a roadblock. So we see as a timeline in spring, getting the tech in place. We've already really built those relationships with KPS and with Metro to make that happen. The big piece of this is education outreach, so that we can help parents, students, educators, everybody know what they need to know in order to get ready for summer, so that they know that this is going to happen and they can plan accordingly in the following school year. And then when they get their IDs in the following school year, to know that this is there and what it means. So we've got some videos planned. We've got, of course, social media outreach planned. 311 has very kindly agreed to put this information with the city manager's office in this first tier of scripts, so that if you're a parent come July and you say, the buses are going to be free, but I need more information, you can call in. We'll have the information that they need. We can also direct them, of course, to KPS and Metro and KPL websites for more information there. So we're very excited about this. The go-live date would be with the ID distribution of Kalamazoo Public School high schools. So basically, you start school, you go in, you get your picture taken. That takes, I think, a day or two usually. You'll get your ID. So that ID will be live when you receive it. And the fund in general also contains a piece for drivers' education training. So this has been really spearheaded by Chad Wendt, who's the Youth Development Coordinator at Parks and Rec, in partnership with Vaughn and Vaughn Washington Jr. and the Kalamazoo Promise. And so what this does is takes care of that other piece of transportation, which is not everybody's going to be riding the bus. Some people are going to really want access to a car. They're going to need to go further. And so linked in with performance in science and biology going into the 9th grade, if you meet those metrics that are set up with the schools and with the Promise, then there's basically a voucher given to Parks and Rec stewards you through that system to have your driver's training taken care of. So we see this as kind of a mobility solution. This is, of course, phase 1, and we're just trying to make it really doable, really proof of product in all these different ways, and just have the transportation available for the young people to do what they need to do moving forward. So, are there any questions?
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Great.
Next, would call forward Laura Lamb, our Assistant City Manager, and she's going to talk more detail about the Foundation for Excellence and proposed funding.
Just wanted to do a quick overview of the mission statement from the Foundation for Excellence. Clearly, you can read it. I think the key piece here is the critical nature of the Foundation for Excellence to support the goals of the city, and how important that we use our aspirational dollars to really empower residents to achieve the lives that they want. I get to do a quick overview of the proposed 2019 FFE budget. It's a bit of a review for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of the projects and programs we highlighted for you with excitement about 2019 rely on proposed FFE funding to happen. Also review in that the budget that we're going to walk through is the budget that we walked through in September. We had an opportunity to also walk through the Foundation for Excellence Board in October. As you remember, last year we talked about the importance of wanting to make sure we're able to flow information through the Commission, through the Foundation for Excellence Board, before it comes back to you for final consideration, and that's been a major part of our work this year. So briefly touching upon this, the Great Neighborhoods infrastructure line, $1 million of this is sidewalks. If you remember our Imagine Kalamazoo discussions, we've heard sidewalks, and more sidewalks. A lot of the conversations around the neighborhood plans have resulted in, so sidewalks, so where? And so we're really working with our neighborhood groups to understand the most heavily walked, most heavily traversed needs where we do replacement. It also calls for the planting of 500 trees, for the trimming of trees that we have, and for traffic calming and train flow. The parks, Sean Fletcher went over in great detail. The Rockwell structure that allows us to expand Super Rec. It allows us to do the resurfacing in Upjohn, as well as the Reed Street Park in its full entirety. What I like very much about the Reed Street Park example, Sean and his team going out to the neighborhood asking them to imagine a different park. Well, they imagined far beyond what the budget was anticipated. And I think what we're looking at using Foundation for Excellence dollars is to fill the gap between what we thought we could budget and where their imagination went. And I think that's exactly how we want to be able to use our funding. The neighborhood engagement and activation line, a lot of the exciting projects that Rebecca talked about, we don't want to come to you and say, yes, we've approved another plan. We want to say, we have implemented another plan. And this budget allows us to not only work with neighborhoods, to do outreach, to drill people to meetings, to get their ideas, to get the plans approved, but also quick win dollars to make sure that when we bring plans before you for approval, we already have 3 or 4 projects in the pipeline ready to celebrate. We know we've been planning for a long time. We really have to start getting to action, and these are the dollars. Sometimes I like to think about almost fairy dust. How can we sprinkle things around in the neighborhoods to help people understand all this planning is paying off? We heard you, and now it's time to get to the doing. You heard very much from Director Fletcher our desire to expand and enhance our youth programs. I want to call attention to the Shared Prosperity High Impact Fund. This is funding set aside that's relying on the Shared Prosperity Organizing Committee that you all appointed earlier this year and our 3 goal teams. They've spent quite a bit of time over the past couple of months thinking through a very thoughtful process of how we can honor the Shared Prosperity Plan, honor the neighborhood plans that are coming forward, to try to figure out the best way to invest these dollars that are going to get us to our shared prosperity goals. Just heard about the Youth Mobility Fund, and you heard our Community Investment Manager, Dora Bonner, and Rebecca Kick, Director, talking about some of the exciting hopes and dreams we have around Business Development Fund, around economic development and affordable housing in partnership with LISC. On the personnel, from the beginning, we've retained our support of 4 positions: Shared Prosperity Coordinator, the Foundation for Excellence Coordinator, Youth Development Coordinator, and Neighborhood Activator. And we've also wanted to make sure that we continue to have an opportunity to tell the FFE story. As we briefly touched upon, we did an annual report that went out to every household in Kalamazoo to be able to talk about the beginning of the Foundation for Excellence and how people can get involved in what we're doing. Also see our line here for budget stabilization. And lastly, our property tax reduction item that allows us to continue to have the property tax reduction that happened last year. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner?
The 4 personnel, would you go over them again?
Sure. Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo Coordinator, the Foundation for Excellence Coordinator, Youth Development Coordinator, and Neighborhood Activator.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Last but not least, our data manager, Karen Conley, is going to talk about measurements, scorecards, and accountability.
Yeah, and I'll be brief. So really, all of the departments have said or established really key performance indicators based on the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 goals and sub-goals. And in order for them to be accountable, we need to collect the data. Now, all the departments are using very different softwares and databases, and we currently don't have any place where all of that data comes together. So in 2019, we're going to take all of these different pieces and combine them into a city data warehouse. That will give us the ability to make informed decisions based on solid data. We're currently in the process of creating some policies around data, so data governance, data validation, all of those things. And we hope to have that in place, really implementation in Q3 of 2019. The other piece that's important for this is once we have this in place and the city data is in order, we can partner with community to have other data combined with that to have really an overall community strategy and have better decisions for the entire community outside of just City Hall. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Commissioner
The funding from the Light Grant, is that being used to help do this work?
That is the plan.
I noticed in the budget that it shows $1 million received in 2018 and $1 million expended in 2018. And then it looks like we lose track of it after that. Is that being kept in a separate line item in the budget somewhere?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, I can certainly speak, Laura Lamb, certainly speak on the Dr. Light funding. The $1 million that was received has not been spent. I think I can let Jennifer kind of talk about the accounting if necessary, but the answer is we are currently working on an agreement with Upjohn Institute to be able to work on that green box, the community data repository, to basically connect the pieces. So we would expect in 19 to have some funds being tapped for the Upjohn Institute agreement and contract, as well as to help support the creation of the data warehouse, and then other expenditures related to the process.
Okay, good. Thanks for the update.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Well, just want to wrap this up with next steps. So we will be coming to the commission next meeting, next Monday, with a resolution to set a public hearing for January 7th. And on the 7th, we will actually have the public hearing. And what we plan to do there is also have the Downtown Kalamazoo Partnership give a presentation of their budget, which is part of the adoption of the overall city's budget. So we'll give them an opportunity to share what they have planned for 2019 in the downtown area. We want to bring the budget to the commission on the 22nd for approval. As you know, we have a charter requirement to adopt it by February 1st. So we have some opportunity there to have a little cushion, but ideally we'd like to have it approved on the 22nd. And then we plan on coming back this spring again with a commission retreat to begin looking at 2020 budget and beyond. And we're going to continue to get into the flow of this relative to the budgeting for the upcoming year and Foundation for Excellence and working all of that together in kind of a rhythm for adopting budgets in the future. So we always say it every year, we're going to turn around and get started, and it seems like things get busy, but we are going to come back in the spring for the retreat. That concludes our formal presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to go to citizens' comments. Any citizen wanting to comment this evening, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Citizens' comments first. Commissioner's comment after. And ask questions during the comment.
My name's Zachary Lasker. I live in the city, so I think we should move to monthly bulk trash pickup. Since the quarterly trash pickup has been implemented, frankly, trash has been piling up all over the city. I've noticed it in my neighborhood, I've noticed it in other neighborhoods I'm walking around. We can play political games all we want about it, but that's the reality. The city's even said that they're noticing it with enforcement costs. So, if we want to play political games, we can, but I'm sick of the political games. We have to deal with trash, and that's just the reality. I have a question regarding the data stuff. Is raw data going to be available, or is it just going to be pie charts and pretty pictures? Because I've played with data long enough, and I know you guys have too, and you and I both know that you can twist data in pie charts to make different things appear and disappear. And I would like for raw data to be available so people can actually see the real picture and not what people want people to perceive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Seeing no one, we are at Commissioner's comment.
Yeah, so let me start off by apologizing to you folks and to the public watching for being so late. I knew that I would be a bit late tonight due to work. I was not aware I was going to be this late. Apparently I saved the wrong time in my calendar, and I'm blaming it on lame duck. Couple of questions though that I want to ask, and these should be really simple ones. Apologies for missing the section on housing, but just really quickly, may have already been talked about. I'm wondering if those 9 single-family homes includes the 6 tiny homes that I know that we're helping to fund. My other question is, and I totally understand if you don't have these numbers, I'm just wondering off the top of anybody's heads if we have a rough estimate of how many affordable units are on track for next year so far. Again, totally understand if you don't have those numbers right now. Another question, last question, do we still believe that our economic growth is on track to continue FFE work past 2019 outside of the property tax reduction? And if that's something that has to wait till the retreat, I understand that as well. Do you want to answer, or do you want me to finish my comments?
Keep going.
Okay. I wanted to thank city staff for the moves on customer service. I remember talking about this early on, at least in my term, and I'm sure you all have been working on it long before then, about how necessary improvements on customer service were. So I'm really excited to hear about this call center. Well, not hear about it. I knew about the 311 call center, but to learn more details on that. Really appreciate the focus on strength through diversity from the HR department. That's one that's really, really personally important to me. So I appreciate the work toward that end. And definitely, happy to see funding being utilized for new housing opportunities. I'm just going to put this out there. I do still wish we would consider partnering with Midwest Ministry with Community or any other service provider with the capacity to look into funding a temporary emergency shelter, at least until we've had a chance to do some research and implement a housing first strategy. I'll remind folks that we still do have homeless people living out in the elements. I know that some of them go to the mission and some still are not welcome at the mission. There have been times that I've had to call ahead to get the mission to let certain people in, and that still hasn't worked for everybody. And we get knocks on our door at least once a day from folks looking for something to keep them warm, just wanting to warm up, maybe need a shower, maybe need a nap. And so I just want us to keep them on our minds as we're thinking about what we can do with our funds. And then finally, this is a shameless plug for my work outside of the city, but I want to include a word on lame duck, which is happening at the state right now. For those of you who don't know, lame duck is a time that the outgoing administration works on passing a lot of things very quickly without very much review. Right now, there have been attempts to gut minimum wage and earned paid sick time, establish a shadow school board that would take over the power of our publicly elected school boards, eliminate state environmental protections so that we cannot protect our city more than what the federal government puts in place. It's an unprecedented power grab from the incoming governor, secretary of state, and attorney general, and it would ensure more dark money spent on campaigns and local nonprofits, or attempts to at least, including the FFE. And remember, we were all really big on having transparency there. So that would be, I think, a major thing for the city. Hasn't passed yet. That's not to say it couldn't. So anyway, regardless of your party affiliation or lack of affiliation, please call your state reps. Please call your governor. Let them know that you want them to hear from you and your families as opposed to corporate lobbyists. And that's it. I'll shut up. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Director Kick to speak to your questions on affordable housing and whether the tiny homes are where they included in the account. So.
I was going to do that too. So some of our numbers are included in the talking points, but Dorla did give just a quick report out on some of the projects that we are looking forward to in 2019, which could include, because not all of these, ink's not dry yet, and some of them are applications that would need to go through, a potential of nearly 630 or so both, that's a mix of multifamily is the bulk of that, maybe about 15 to 20 single-family homes. But nearly half of them would be under the 80% average median income. And Dorla did also talk about our efforts towards creating a policy that really hits the city income, because we know a lot of the NISTA projects and are looking at a county income. And so what we're trying to do is say, yes, we see you, but we would ask that you adjust your rents even lower or hit even that 80% to 60%, which then really truly gets us into an affordable range. And then for the tiny house project, we are supporting flood information in many ways. We haven't completely vetted her project to see how we're supporting the houses yet, but we are doing pre-development costs and we're helping her with some ages.
Okay, so that's possibly 6 additional.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners? Anybody? Commissioner?
Well, thank you, Shannon, for bringing up this lame duck thing. It's embarrassing to the whole state what's going on right now there. Wisconsin is getting most of the publicity about it because they have a very activist governor who has a very bad reputation. We don't seem to have a governor that's quite in that category. And frankly, up until you spoke, I was kind of counting on the governor vetoing all of that, but there's no assurance that he will. He's just not the same kind of character that Governor Walker is. But thank you for bringing that to everybody's attention, and I think that anything that we can do to just alert the public in general of what's going on, let them decide what they want to do. I think that once they realize what's going on, I can trust them to act in a direction that I think I would prefer, but I'm a little reluctant to tell them how to talk to their representative. But I think once they know what the issues are, they'll do right. The other thing I wanted to talk to all of you about, and I just thought this would be a good time, is I wanted to alert you to a project I would hope to enlist the City Commission's help on. It involves approving a resolution advocating creating another scheduled train each day on Amtrak as soon as it can be done. I've talked to the Amtrak multi-state representative who says Amtrak is ready to do that once the political pressure is applied through the legislature to MDOT. I met with the Michigan Association of Railway Passengers. That was just Saturday up in Lansing to alert them to what I've proposed to do to get their support and advice. And it's a pretty small group, but they do a lot of work for the size they are. They'll be an important ally. So what I want to just alert you to is I'll be sending you an email outlining what a way to go, a strategy for doing this that involves other jurisdictions along the route. And I figure if we, as a city, pass a resolution that meets everybody's approval here, we pass it, that can be used as a model to suggest that other cities along the route pass a resolution. Then we get the legislative contingents of each of these cities to talk to their legislators, and then we figure a way to just keep this in front of the legislators for as long as it takes. This is a multi-year project. This is something that will take maybe anywhere from 1 to 4 years to do. But part of the thing is, even after they speed up the rail, the schedule between Dearborn and Kalamazoo, which will happen this summer, Amtrak says now we can lower our labor costs per passenger because we can actually put more trains on. If the trains are traveling a less time, that's less labor costs. So we can use the money that we were saving on those people to put them on other trains. and keep the labor costs the same, but there's more passengers. So that's a big incentive that MDOT, that will help sell the idea to MDOT, because they'll probably have to increase their subsidy somewhat, but not proportionally. It won't be like 5/4 with the number of trains they have now. It might be something less than that. So just be looking for my email, and I'm hoping to answer your questions about it and get your advice. And I'm willing to be the point person on this with the other jurisdictions, but I'd like to have something official from the city and the endorsement of the mayor and his support, so that when I go to these other groups or other jurisdictions, or if the mayor comes with me if he has time, we really have some standing. That it's not just Jack Urban or an individual citizen doing this. And I'm in it for the long haul if you guys want to invest in it, the whole strategy. So that just heads up on that. I hope that I can pursue it with you.
Just for tonight, I just want to talk about this night and these people and this work. And it's amazing to me that even though you would think that 3.5 hours would be a long enough time to adequately describe everything the city of Kalamazoo is doing, as it turns out, we've got to just rush through it and brush the top of a lot of topics, even to get through it in a 3.5 hour meeting. And it's astounding to me, all the plates we're trying to keep spinning and the values that we're trying to bring to those spinning plates. And that work is done every day, by, it's 95% of the audience that's here getting to sit through all this, working together as a team, with Jim empowering folks to do that work. And it is impressive. Once again, I feel like it's a bit overwhelming, and I just keep my fingers crossed. Can we keep all these plates spinning? We got a lot of work going in a lot of arenas, and we're trying to do it in a manner that provides a foundation for equity and deploying our values with the work. And that is very meaningful. So I appreciate that. It's great to be here with everybody that cares so much about this city and spend a few hours together. So thank you, Jim, and thank you, everybody.
Amen, brother.
Other commissioner comments? I'm sorry.
That's what you would say. Okay, I just had a couple of things. One, thanks, Jim. Thanks, staff. Very exciting things happening here. Really exciting, and it's really great to hear that. And I want to thank Commissioner Sykes, because that's so important. What's going on in Lansing is a deliberate effort to thwart the expressed will of the people of this, and we should not be silent. We should be taking a stand on that.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Yeah, just a couple of items, Your Honor. I want to thank all of the staff. There are several that presented tonight, but there were also several that were part of developing this budget and the presentation that didn't speak. So several of them are in the room, but I just want to thank everyone for the tremendous job, especially Neil Conway and Amanda Cockcroft on the presentation. I think every year Neil tries to top the previous year, and I think this year he was very successful. So stay tuned for next year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a Christmas present.
We had help this year, so
Yeah.
Give him another person, he'll be in trouble.
And then this is actually the last budget that Jerome Cascorni will be going through as assistant city manager. So he will be retiring in March. So I think that's worth noting, and thanking him for his good work and in all that he's done for the city. There'll be opportunities to do that later, but I just thought tonight would be a good opportunity to lay that out. That's it.
Thanks. A couple of quick things I had. I wanted to ask the assessor with all of this open gov stuff that's happening, or not the auditor, excuse me, with all the open gov work that's happening, is this going to make your auditing opportunities and responsibilities more productive, easier, that sort of thing, whether it's the data part or the open gov part?
I don't know the impact of that yet. They just have just very started on the open gov part of it.
And are you involved in this implementation?
I was asked to do some assisting in the reconciliation of the data transfer when they do that. So that hasn't occurred yet. But.
So one of the things that I often remind the commission that our charter allows our auditor to not just audit financial processes. And so she's that other arm of the other leg of the stool that we sometimes forget is there. It's important that we have the auditor engaged in the development, moving this forward, the implementation on behalf of the commission, especially as it relates to accountabilities and expectations. So I don't know how we weave her into this more, but it's her responsibility, I think, for us, per the charter, and we need to ensure that we heighten her involvement in this open gov. And I believe if that's going to be our warehouse for data, for information, that's what she needs to do her job. So if we can make that happen, that would be great. We don't talk about what we anticipate as carryover from one year to the next. Sometimes it sort of gets up there as a number. I would love information about what we see as carryover. Did we meet our targets? Did we not meet our targets? I do want, if we could, at some point in time, help me understand how we lose 100 people in Metro, but we still have the same amount of people in the organization. I'm confused on that a little bit. That should have been a net gain of, well, I'm confused, and maybe I'm just confused. But I thought we had 640 so people before Metro. And if we have 640 people now, I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll show that.
And then going to lame duck just for a minute, I am preparing some communication especially regarding the transparency piece and giving to contributing to, can I speak? Not-for-profits, and so I am preparing some communication with the Urban Core Mayors of Michigan. That's the mayors of 13 of our largest urban cores are all working with MML, opposing a number of these. We don't all agree on all of them, but opposing a number of these. And we're working with MML. I know they've taken a position on about 6 or 7 of them. I'm not sure exactly that number. And then Commissioner Urban, I do want to talk to you about Amtrak. I might want to slow you down a little bit because there's some alignment that needs to happen with others that are working on other pieces of the Amtrak work that relates to what you're talking about. And so we should try to be in alignment so we're not getting asked for another resolution. Let's get ourselves aligned because there are some things such as having a community body that has some responsibility to inform sort of an advisory committee. There is a place for that in legislation. We have not done that in this community. So that's just one example.
Well, I'm all ears for that. I'd be happy to.
Yeah. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, staff. I didn't say it, but they said it. We love you. Keep it up.